City, good morning. Denver, Colorado, you've been tuning in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You're waking up in the greatest country in history. We're off and running. We got a whole show planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver, pick up that phone, give us a call, and let's get in on the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line at 720-819-5115. Those text messages coming in right here to the studio. Just a few minutes. We're going to talk with Chris Murray. He's the founder of First and 14th Law. Donald Trump's sentencing coming up in 4 days. What is it going to look like? Could the president be doing jail time in New York? What is going on? We'll cover that. Also, this is the 4-year anniversary of the January 6th rioting that took place. Trump's promising a pardon on them. I've got a poll up on X on this. Who do you think should receive clemency? All of them that were involved on January 6th? None of them. Or just the nonviolent ones? Currently, all of them leading at 66%, which is interesting.
All of them. That's great.
I mean, I want to hear the rationale on that, because I'm in the kind of nonviolent camp, right? If you were the grandma walking around, and I say this in part because of the lack of prosecution that took place around the BLM riots. So, you know, if we're just going to kind of look the other way on some of those, but we're going to prosecute the crud out of a grandma who walked around the Capitol, that doesn't seem fair to me.
But the thing for me is, how many grandmas are we talking about? I mean, how many? Is it 25? Is it 35? Yeah. Is it,
I don't know,
40? Because that fact for me is based on significance. That if we're just talking about, nonviolent people that walked around and grandmas, okay. But if it's, if you're looking at 2/3, 3/4, and there's part of me that, what is that limit? What's that threshold of the nonviolent? If I went into an office and I took something, that's nonviolent. So I mean, do I get that? I'm kind of curious about where everybody's line would be. Where's that line of demarcation? And it's really, really weird that we're 4 years removed from that, and the guy that was there as part of the impetus of it is now returning and going to be certified yet again. That is a really, really weird wrinkle in the timeline.
Kamala Harris going to be certifying him today.
I know, but remember, if it was Mike Pence, though, the recommendation would have been not to. So that's the weird part, is that where we were then and where we are now, 4 years later, based on what the current administration 4 years ago was trying to execute and try to make happen, versus where we are now and who's involved and who isn't. Yeah.
It's a wild ride in American politics.
Yes,
so we're on the 4-year anniversary of January 6, 2020, when the riots took place. And today, Donald Trump being certified through the Electoral College voting, and Kamala Harris is going to be certifying that vote. So lots to watch. Plus, later in the show, we're going to talk with Tony Kovaleski, Denver 7 chief investigator, on the latest regarding the Las Vegas attacker, what took place there.
I got a question about that, and it's not really for Tony, but something maybe you and I can talk about when we get there.
Yeah,
I want to know what has happened in journalism that we have almost no outlets actually reporting the manifesto. So I wouldn't say manifesto is probably not the best way.
But the little notes that he wrote, like on his phone.
Notes. Yeah, the two notes.
Right.
Almost nobody's covering those.
Yeah.
And there are some very, very interesting things inside of there. He does in one of them say, this is not a terrorist attack. He specifically says he's not doing this for terrorism.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about the things. And there is something in there, and I don't know if it's the first one or the second one, I'm going to go back and look, that when you read it, you're like, hang on. Well, wait. This is what he was hoping his actions were going to predicate. And you're like, hang on.
The federal government takeover?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, how come nobody's talking about that? That's what he was hoping to have happen. That this was going to be the alarm bell that would set off these actions he hoped that veterans and military members would take.
We're going to take over federal buildings and highways and basically the entire city of D.C.
To do what? Do you remember?
No. What was it?
To purge the Democrats.
Oh, purge. Yeah.
But remember, it's by force or if they don't leave by any means necessary, which does mean execution.
That's crazy.
Yes. And no one's talking about it. No one. The hell? I don't understand. I really do not understand what the hell is going on with supposed journalists. Nobody, not even Sport Court Boy. Nobody. Really? The dude, shopping at JCPenney's. He's always.
He was hammering Heidi Ganahl over something.
I know, but he always wants to play those games. Even him. Even Channel 9 with Bart's people all the time. They can't do this. Crap, guys. This was awful.
At the 8 o'clock hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is going to give us the latest on this Jeffco chief of schools that apparently committed suicide and what Jefferson County is trying to communicate to parents. It's failures there. This whole trusted adult thing that was built over there. Jimmy's going to be joining us in the 8 o'clock hour. And then Ian Escalante, the executive director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, giving us some insight into some anti-gun legislation coming from the Colorado State Capitol already as they get ready to kick off later this week as well. So whole lot of news, but what we are missing is your voice. So give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Let's check in on news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Bill. Yeah, crazy weekend, and it's probably going to get a little wild today once again. 18 and clear in Denver, expecting a high of 38 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. All right. President Biden doing what he does best over the weekend, forgetting and blabbering about just nonsense with the piano being played in the background.
Do you still believe he's a threat to democracy?
I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. By being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
I don't know what that had to do with anything. He was ridiculous in a gaggle with reporters on Sunday. Congress set to meet today to certify the results of the election. Members of the House and Senate will count the elected votes from all 50 states in D.C., with Kamala Khan reading aloud each state's results. The U.S. Capitol Police say heavy security is in place 4 years after the chaos at the Capitol January 6, 4 years ago.
You lost, Democrats, you lost because you lied about January 6th, calling it worse than Pearl Harbor or 9/11, instead of what January 6th really was, the FBI guided tour of the Capitol building.
That was Rob Schneider, by the way. Biden and the First Lady will be in New Orleans today to meet with family members of the victims of the Bourbon Street terrorist attack. In Canada, Justin Trudeau may actually resign as early as today. The best thing that could happen to Canadians and freedom-loving people. The Broncos ended their 8-year playoff drought with a 38-0 victory over the Chiefs on Sunday.
Here's Nix rolling out, looking for the rookie record. Ball tipped and caught. Oh my gosh! The double deflection and a Denver touchdown.
Broncos enter the postseason for the first time since 2015-2016, which led to a victory in the Super Bowl. Denver hits the road to take on the Bills in the opening round of the NFL playoffs Sunday at 11 o'clock. Brunch time coming up this Sunday. Head coach Sean Payton gave a game ball to ownership after the game.
I don't make deals with anyone. There's no quit.
Wrong one.
I've been to a number of pro teams, but I told the players, you don't get to pick a lot of times where you end up, but you guys are at a good spot. And this is a group that cares about you. They talk about it. I hear it. And they're very consistent. And I think in today's pro sports, I think it's probably one of the bigger indicators of success. I know for me personally, when I went through this process, that meant a lot to me relative to where, and I said that it wasn't like I was looking to choose to join Patrick Mahomes in this division, but the ownership group here was the reason.
Bo Nix, 26 of 29, 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. And Cortland Sutton, 32-yard catch in the first half, put him over 1,065 yards. And that nets him $500,000, a bonus from the Broncos.
Hey, Blake, I got to ask you about this, being a sports guy. How is it that the difference between first string and second string is like the difference between pros and like high school players?
Yeah.
I mean, that gap is so big when Kansas City plays at second string. They probably would have beaten the Broncos if it was their first string because they're that good and they've beat us before. And yet we just go, 38-0 over them?
Yeah, well,
how is that gap big in the pros?
It depends on the situation. I mean, first of all, you're talking about a Pro Bowl quarterback who wasn't playing, guy who's won how many Super Bowls? 3? Is it 3 now? So he's not playing. They knew they didn't have to win. They didn't have to win the game. All they wanted to do was be healthy after do what they had to do, play as hard as possible without getting more guys injured. And Broncos had plenty to play for. They had everything to play for. So to answer your question, depends on the situation. There is a gap between 1s and 2s, but I've seen occasions where there are 5 or 6 second teamers in there stepping up, next man up, including quarterbacks in crucial situations, and they've pulled off upsets. So I think yesterday was bottom line, Kansas City didn't need to win the game. Broncos had to win the game. It was at home, and good for both because Kansas City is a favorite, and the Broncos are going to need a miracle in Buffalo.
I was going to say, give me your prediction in Buffalo.
Oh, I think they can compete with them. It kind of depends on the weather, in my opinion. Because if you go to Buffalo and it's freaking, it's 10 below, then you can go ahead and hand that one to the Bills. But that's going to be a difficult game to win. I don't think the Broncos have a chance. But how about Friday? I give you a prediction.
Yes.
Maybe I changed my mind by Friday. You and Billy have your predictions, and who knows? I mean, they could go in there and pull off the upset.
Von Miller. That's ouch.
Yeah, there you go.
He's going to
still playing.
Oh, yeah.
He's getting up there, isn't he?
Oh, but he is still a beast.
He is. He's still productive.
Yeah, he just reached a salary bonus of $1.5 million based on sacks on Saturday or Sunday when they played Sunday. When they played yesterday, he can still get after it. He doesn't have to play every down, and that's the dangerous part about it. He is going to harass Bo Nix. Although I do want to tell you this, the thing that was the most enjoyable for me watching the Broncos yesterday during the Chiefs was seeing the absolute apoplectic meltdown of Bengals fans on social media.
Is that right?
Oh, they lost it. and they lost it because they were convinced that the Chiefs were throwing the game on purpose, in part because they were scared of the Bengals. Because they were all telling themselves, well, look, the Bengals just beat the Broncos last week, and now the Chiefs are really worried. And so that's why they're not doing this. Like, not because they're trying to keep Patrick Mahomes healthy. No, not because Travis Kelce should be healthy. No, not at all. And so, the amount of rationalization and the Chiefs are just scared of us. No, they're not. The Chiefs are not scared of anybody, honestly. But least of all the Broncos, but still.
That's true.
I know. But it'll be fun.
Exciting.
Yeah. The thing is, hope. We have hope. For the first time in the Broncos nation, for the first time in years.
Since Super Bowl 50.
Hope. Yeah.
And you know what? And uniforms are so bad these days.
Yes.
The
Yeah, they
retro uniform yesterday
It
looked
looks so
so good.
It did. It looked
It looks
so good.
it's so vibrant and
Yes.
man, and you know what? I wasn't a big fan of those uniforms in the 80s and growing up. I just wasn't a big fan.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, tried to be objective, good for the Broncos, whatever, but man, yesterday those things looked so good.
Yeah.
And the
they did.
D at the 50-yard line.
Oh, the D was amazing.
That
That was so
It
cool.
looks so good, man.
The only thing with the new uniforms that I liked last night, the Lions doing those blue helmets with the black line, that's nice. That's sharp.
See,
because of how
yeah.
cold. I wouldn't want it all the time, but as an alternate helmet, that's sharp. Rarely do I like the alternate helmets. I like the Broncos alternate white helmet. Rarely do I like the alt helmets. That one's sharp.
That's an improvement
Yeah.
for Detroit. I agree with you. The problem is the jersey. They had a black jersey with the blue number. I can't stand that, man.
No.
Just go. If you're gonna go with the black jersey, black pants, make the number white. And blue's too close to black, and it's just all cluttered.
Yeah, and use the blue. Use the blue as a highlight. Do white numbers with a blue outline or a blue shadow or something on there. Yeah, you can be creative. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, come on.
Look at us doing fashion.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. We're solving all the problems in the world.
Everything. All the important stuff.
All right, Americans paying their respects to the late President Jimmy Carter. The 39th president died last weekend in his home state of Georgia at the age of 100. His remains are now in the Georgia State Capitol, where he will lie in repose at the Carter Center until Tuesday morning. From there, the late president and his family will travel to D.C., where he will be taken by horse-drawn carriage to the U.S. Capitol for a ceremony at the Capitol Rotunda. A former Denver prosecutor is being disbarred after allegedly trying to frame a colleague for sexual harassment. The office of the presiding disciplinary judge ordered the disbarment of Eugene Choi last week. Investigators say Choi fabricated evidence, altered cell phone records, and destroyed electronic devices to try to support her accusations against the DA's office colleague, Dan Hines. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Ooh, it's chilly. 15 in Brighton, 16 in Littleton, and 18 in Denver. Jeff and Billy are back. It is Monday as we start the week, and we kick it off. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. New York Times reporting that this January 10th, New York judge who oversaw President-elect Donald J. Trump's hush money trial is going to be sentencing the president-elect, but the judge signaling possibly no jail time. New York judge on Friday upheld President-elect Donald J. Trump's felony conviction, but signaled he was inclined to spare him any punishment, a striking development in a case that has spotlighted an array of criminal acts and imperiled the former and future president's freedom. The judge, Mersham, as Blake likes to call him, indicated that he favored a so-called unconditional discharge of Mr. Trump's sentence, a rare and lenient alternative to jail or probation. He has set sentencing for January 10th and ordered Mr. Trump to appear either in person or virtually. If you remember, we walked through this trial day by day in many ways with Chris Murray, an attorney with 1st and 14th Law here in Colorado, giving us some insight. So as we get to sentencing phase now, we're welcoming Chris Murray back. Good morning, Chris. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, morning.
Hey, morning, fellas. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. Let's dive into this. What are we looking at here with regards to this conviction? And is the president going to appeal it? Could the president end up in jail in New York?
All right. Well, first thing, no, he's not going to end up in jail. Second, what are we looking at? We're looking at a giant kabuki dance as a judge tries to find a way to, I'm sure some of your listeners have probably, and I know Bill for sure has seen, the internet meme, right, from The Simpsons where Homer Simpson kind of backs into the hedge, right? That's what Judge Mersham is doing here.
Yeah, he is. He's trying to figure out a way to impose a sentence without actually imposing a sentence. And how does he do that?
But
sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, isn't this what he has wanted all along?
I don't know. So if you'll recall, that when I was on the show back over the summer after the conviction, right? And there was the initial delay in the sentencing, right? I sort of threw out there that I wasn't sure that he actually wanted to impose jail time, right? And that he was trying to figure out what to do. Well, now I think he clearly has the reason to not impose jail time. But I've got to tell you that I actually think he has the reason to dismiss the prosecution entirely. And I think the right result here is that whatever you think of what the jury got to, we discussed it over the summer. I don't think a conviction should have even happened here in the first place. But even if you think, hey, you want to know what the jury got there, he's convicted, so be it. New York law, like the law of most other states, would allow the court under these exceptional circumstances where there is some impediment to the continued jurisdiction of the courts and ability to continue with the case. It would allow the court to dismiss the prosecution even after a conviction. That's what Trump's attorneys asked for, and I think that's what the judge should have done here.
Talking to Chris Murray, an attorney with 1st and 14th Law, actually the founder of this great law firm here in Colorado. So, Chris, if we remember back to when the conviction took place, Hillary Clinton was fined something similar to this in the sense of, not essentially being honest with her election filings, all that. And she ended up just paying a fine. Why was it that New York sought criminal charges on these payments when other political leaders just paid election fines?
Well, I mean, so again, the real answer to that, Jeff, I hate to say it. I wish there was another answer here. The answer to that is who the prosecutor is, Alvin Bragg. Mr. Bragg decided that there was political hay to be made prosecuting Donald Trump in New York. It was at the time that he initiated the prosecution, it was politically popular in New York. And that's why he decided to bring these sorts of charges. And that's why he has continued to seek jail time for President Trump. I mentioned just a second ago that I think that the prosecution should be dismissed. Some of your listeners might be saying, well, how can you dismiss it? You've got a conviction here. Well, the problem is that the case isn't final until New York's highest court has passed on it or refused to hear it. Trump hasn't gotten there yet. He has an appeal as of right to the New York to the next level of the New York court system, and there's a law in New York, like there is in almost every other state. Right, in New York, it's CPL section 2010-20, and it says that a court can dismiss an indictment when there exists some other jurisdictional or legal impediment to the conviction of the defendant for the offense charged. And it also, there's a section right after that that says that the attorney general, the court, or the defendant may ask for relief to ask that the attorney general discontinue the prosecution when there is some equitable reason or compelling factor or other circumstance that demonstrates that a conviction or continued prosecution of the defendant would constitute an injustice. And I really think that second section, the prosecution continues if Trump appeals, even though he's been convicted. And this, I think, is a very rare circumstance where, hey, you're going to be president of the United States. That means that you cannot have a criminal case hanging over you and distracting you from executing the duties of that office. The New York courts ought to just say, hey, look, this is very, very rare. Yeah, we have a conviction here, but because the state cannot be asked to continue prosecuting an appeal, and because we cannot ask Trump to be distracted from the presidency while he appeals this, we're going to go ahead and set the case aside.
Chris Murray, partner at First and 14th, joining Jeff and Bill live. Do you think that Marchand would actually go as far as to dismiss the case? And the reason I ask that, I'm incredibly skeptical that he would, because in my mind, that actually confirms all the allegations about this being a bogus case, about Marchand being in the tank, about this being totally political, this being directed by the Joe Biden administration. All of those things will then appear to be, and I'm using air quotes, self-evident if the judge at this stage decides to dismiss. I'm of the opinion that he is going to find any way he possibly can to maintain the conviction without any actual punishment, because I don't think he wants to wash away all the work. And also, I don't think he wants to sully his reputation, because everybody afterwards will come out and go, oh, he's the guy that presided over that bogus case against Donald Trump. Even he said it was bogus because he dismissed it. How does he get around that one?
Yeah, I mean, so Bill, I agree with you. He's said that when Trump moved to dismiss this case, okay, he has ordered that he's not going to dismiss it. He could always change his mind and dismiss it. I think that would be the right thing to do. But he says he's going to go forward with the sentencing and instead impose a sentence of unconditional discharge, or that he's likely to do that. By the way, the reason that for sure that he's not thinking jail time is appropriate is because Trump is being allowed to attend the sentencing virtually. Right.
And there was something in his ruling too, where he talked about the idea that incarceration not being appropriate in this case. I don't remember what the language was, but there was something buried in there that I remember running across going, that's an interesting place. And it was a tail end of a paragraph. I'm like, that's a weird place to drop it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was basically Marchand acknowledging, right, that if he was looking to imprison the president-elect 10 days before he's to take office, that would be a constitutional crisis, right? He can't do that. And frankly, that he just doesn't have the power to do that, because the Supreme Court has recognized that you cannot have the threat of prosecution, right, or make a prosecution the most important thing that a president is dealing with, right? By the way, like, where does this come out of? A little bit out of Nixon, but actually there's a 2000 opinion from the Office of Legal Counsel in the Department of Justice. Like, where did that opinion come from? Well, can we prosecute Bill Clinton for perjury, right? Short of having him impeached. And the 2000 OLC opinion basically said presidential immunity comes from two places. Yes, he controls the Department of Justice, but that only makes him immune from federal prosecution. It comes from another place, which is that the president, if you're saying, hey, you're going to go to jail for doing something, right? What is everybody or most normal people going to spend most of their time focusing on? How do I not go to jail? How do I get my jail sentence lessened? How do I please this judge who's threatening me with jail, right? And we don't want a president to be subject to another official in exercising their duties or being distracted by another official or by the possibility of going to jail when exercising their duties as president of the United States. And Marchand saying, hey, I'm just going to not send you to jail, I think he thinks that that is the way to do this, that it preserves Trump's appellate rights, it keeps the conviction legit, but then he can say to Trump, look, you don't have anything to be worried about. I've discharged your sentence unconditionally. So no matter what happens, whether your conviction is upheld or it isn't, you'll never go to jail, so you don't need to be distracted with this. Where I think he gets that wrong is Trump still has to be personally involved in helping his lawyers with the appeal of the case. It is going to take a chunk of his time to help his lawyers with the appellate part of this case. A lot less than the trial part, but it's going to take some time. Trump has said he's going to appeal. And I think what Marchand is trying to say is, look, you don't need to appeal. There's no sentence, so don't worry about it. Trump's going to appeal. And Bill, to your point about the judge's reputation, I think that appeal is likely to do more damage to his reputation than his dismissal of this case after President Trump's election.
Ooh, interesting. Chris Murray, partner in First and 14th, joining Jeff and Bill live. I wanted to apply that field for a little while as far as why you think the appeal can do more harm to Marchand's reputation. But most importantly, I want to know, what potential sentence do you think, if you were a betting man, Marchand could hand down that, again, wouldn't put him in prison, but also wouldn't be so onerous? What I'm looking at is Marchand, for me, is trying to find a fine line where there is some nominal form of punishment so that it still looks like the case is good, but it's not going to be a large threshold that then would be overturned on appeal, saying, hey, you can't come here and take $350 million because he did this, or you can't fine him, $750,000 for X, Y, or Z. But if that penalty is so low, I believe the appeals court is like, well, you're not doing anything to him anyway. Why do we even have this conviction? I think that he's trying to put Trump into a box where it makes it difficult to appeal. I just don't want to be a felon anymore because of the legal case inside, because of the case. Unless he can point to something that went wrong inside the case, that felony conviction still would hold. I think that's what Marchand is trying to figure out. What sort of sentence do I impose that the appellate court doesn't look at it as being too onerous or being too de minimis? What would you think he would try to do?
Well, and so, Bill, I agree with you that Marchand is trying to figure out exactly that, right? The problem for him is I just think that President-elect Trump holds all the cards here. He holds every single card, except for the fact that the jury found against him, right? But Trump is going to appeal no matter what, and this is not a case where the New York Court of Appeals, which is their Supreme Court, has to take it. No, the intermediate appellate court in New York is going to take the appeal because it has to. Trump has a right to that appeal. Trump is going to appeal the case no matter what Marchand does. Trump has said this. I believe him when he says that, because I think, as you said, Trump doesn't want to be a felon. Who does, right? And why wouldn't you appeal given the amount of money that he's already spent defending himself in this case? So because Trump is going to appeal no matter what, the fact that he's going to appeal the minute that he appeals the sentence, that I think stacks the legal deck in his favor, and here's why. Because by the time he files his appeal, he is going to be the president of the United States. Okay. And his appeal will be prosecuted entirely while he's the president of the United States. And the Office of Legal Counsel memoranda that have explained sort of why presidential immunity exists, right? As I said a minute ago, there's two reasons for it. Reason number one is that he controls federal prosecutions. All right, forget that. This isn't a federal prosecution. But reason number two is the consequence of the personal attention that a defendant has to, as a practical matter, given defending against a criminal prosecution, including its appeal. And the fact that he's the president and he's going to be forced to file an appeal and say, look at all the time you have already forced me to spend defending myself. I'm the president of the United States. I asked the lower court to please dismiss the prosecution to save me this time. You, New York Court of Appeals, should do that. Forget whether or not the jury got it wrong. This prosecution, because I am now the president, right, cannot continue, including the appeal of it. You should dismiss the case, and you should say that Marchand, knowing that I was going to be the president, should have dismissed the case so as not to make me prosecute this appeal.
Now
You're
Chris
a very
Murray,
different kind of a defendant when
now,
you're the president.
what happens, Chris Murray, the very first time that Trump takes time off and goes golfing during this appeal? Because that's
Sure.
what I think the weakness is. Because as soon as Trump takes time away from doing the presidential job duties, he is saying, I can take time off and I have the ability to walk and chew gum. So unless during the entire appeals process, he stays away from a golf course, he doesn't sell any more guitars or tennis shoes or Bitcoin or whatever the hell it is. Unless he does that, for me, if I'm sitting on that appeals court, as soon as he takes time, personal time to do X, Y, or Z, he has extra time. And so I think that for me, that argument would fail at that moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fair, Bill, but it's just not. It's not how the presidential immunity law works, right? Everybody's got some extra time in the day, including presidents, right? I mean, they all sleep, right? They all watch a movie now and then. They all go out to dinner. None of them are doing a job 24/7, right? I mean, nobody does a job.
But to be fair, eating and sleeping is different than going and playing a round of golf. When you're talking about the allocation of your time over the course of a 24-hour day, that is a different choice. It's a totally different choice because you need to sleep, you need to eat, and even some of those minor things. As soon as he's taking out a chunk of time, and again, he played a lot of golf last term, and if he does the same thing, if it's the same pattern, I think this becomes a much weaker argument that he doesn't have time, that he's so busy that he can't possibly work on the appeal. If he's not busy enough to spank Whitey, I think he's going to be fine.
Well, I mean, I don't want to get metaphysical with you here, Bill, but I mean, I guess I disagree with the premise. I think recreation is absolutely essential to any sane person's life, right? It's why even people in the most high stress jobs have to take some time, right? Some regular time, in a day to take little breaks, and also that they have to take some vacation, because otherwise you go completely nuts, right? If you don't have some relaxation. Now, however, right, how much do you need? Okay, totally fair question. I'll just say, and by the way, I'll say that the best argument against what I've articulated here is, and I'm sure you've got some lawyers listening, they'll say, hey, look, a defendant has to practically be involved during a trial. There's no question about that, right? They've got to be involved in every aspect of it. They have to pay attention to it. And you saw how much time Trump had to spend dealing with his trial and preparing for it last year. In an appeal, hey, the cake is kind of baked. The lawyers are going to do most of that for you. You really don't have to spend as much time being involved in it. And maybe the New York appellate courts are going to slice the cheese that way and say, hey, look, it's different once you've already been convicted, because the amount of time that you as a president have to spend reading the legal briefs of your lawyers and watching them prepare for oral argument is way, way smaller. And that doesn't implicate presidential immunity. Maybe. Nobody's said that yet. So that would have to be new law for the court to do it.
Talking with Chris Murray, founder of First and 14th Law here in Colorado. They do political and public law, religious institutions, complex civil litigation. Final question. How much is President Trump going to punish the state of New York for putting him through all this?
I think the best thing New York has going for it, right, is that Trump loves it, right? I mean, he was for most of his life a New Yorker, right? He loves New York City, loves New York State. That much is just, it's obvious, right? He just doesn't like the political leadership there. And I am sure he is going to try to find a way to make, to tweak Kathy Hochul, and to find a way to make Alvin Bragg's life miserable. And frankly, Alvin Bragg, I think, deserves it for bringing this kind of a prosecution. I mean, if Trump can find a way to make it so that future ambitious prosecutors, whether they are Republicans or Democrats, don't play this game of saying, I'm going to be the guy to make it impossible for a guy that the other side likes to run for president, that will be a very, very good thing that he will have accomplished.
Chris Murray, sure appreciate your time today. You can learn more about First and 14th by going to first-14th.com. That's first-14th.com for all of your legal needs, at least related to political and public law.
Yeah, and by the way, guys, I'll say I'm not a Broncos fan, but I agree with Billy. They've got no chance against Buffalo.
Yeah, none. We'll come home early. But again, at least the Broncos are in the playoffs for anybody.
Yes.
Anybody, whatever team you root for, Chris. If your team hasn't been in the playoffs for a while, you get that one playoff. You're like, fine, that's okay. At least we're there. At least we're at the dance.
All right, Chris. Thanks so much for your time
Have a
today.
good one and say hi to the
Appreciate
family.
it. We'll continue to watch all this and maybe get some reaction from Chris following the sentencing that's supposed to take place of Donald Trump on January 10th. All right, coming up, we're going to talk the January Sixers because Trump hinting at pardon promises for all of them, for the nonviolent ones. What do you think? We'll get into this next. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So it's the 4-year anniversary of January 6th, the riots that took place up there at the U.S. Capitol. Wall Street opinion piece today. Trump's pardon promise for January 6 rioters doesn't include the ex-meth trafficker who brought a metal baton and swung it at police. President Trump can't change what happened 4 years ago on January 6th, the Wall Street Journal says, when his mob of supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an impossible effort to undo his 2020 election loss. Soon, though, Mr. Trump will get the power to extricate the riot participants from the legal consequences of their actions. How far will it go? A vast majority should not be in jail, he said recently. Scanning the latest case activity, what jumps out isn't sympathetic characters. On December 20th, the prison sentence of 48 months was given to 31-year-old Joshua Lee Atwood, who pleaded guilty to assaulting law enforcement. He emptied a can of pepper spray at police, beat them with a pole, pelted them with objects such as a metal scaffolding pipe. He yelled that the cops were pieces of the S word, betraying our country. The prosecution's sentencing memo says his criminal history includes a pending felony case for an alleged 2023 stabbing. So I'm there on the nonviolent folks. If you're just walking around in the Capitol, should you do jail time? No. Could you get fined in other ways? Sure. And punished in other ways. But the violent ones, I'm having a hard time with either commuting their sentence or providing clemency for them. Give me a call. Tell me why all J6ers should receive clemency.
Yeah. I don't want to know who the listener wants to pardon. Who is it? And why? And again, because there's a portion of our audience that believes it was all FBI and Antifa.
Yeah.
So, and if so, does that mean that Donald Trump's going to show us the stuff that Tucker Carlson couldn't? Because Tucker promised he has all the tapes.
Well, and if you believe none should be pardoned, I'd like to hear from you as well. Phone lines are open 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
All right, Billy, let's give the people what they want. It's time for You Choose the News.
Yes, it's that time where we kick off your Monday morning with a lot of ridiculousness, easy for me to say, and frivolity. Yes, it is You Choose the News, America's favorite fake radio news game show. I have scoured the interwebs for minutes this morning to find really dumb stories about us humans, giving them even dumber headlines to play this fake radio news game show. Why? Because nobody in charge has any idea that we are this loose and unresponsible with our valuable airtime. So, shh, it's a secret. They wake up in about 6 minutes. So we got about 6 minutes here. Blake Olson joining us from the newsroom. Gentlemen, here are your choices this morning. Choose carefully. Headline number 1, Oscar inspiration. Headline number 2, can you feel the love tonight? Headline number 3, quick to the time machine. And headline number 4, I saw it, so it's true.
Oh,
Your
man,
choice.
I'm a huge Back to the Future fan. Quick to the time machine.
Yes, quick to the time machine. A British scientist who helped design a roadside breathalyzer test has now lost his ability to drive in England after being caught driving drunk, in part due to the breathalyzer. 70-year-old Dr. Richard Lacey admitted recently to drinking, listen to this, a bottle of wine and having some pints with lunch. Let's repeat that. A bottle of wine and some pints with lunch. So not a surprise when the doctor hit a curb in a roundabout in Wales recently and was pulled over for drunk driving. He failed the field-side sobriety test, which included a breathalyzer. If only he had a time machine to go back in time and stop inventing the thing that caused him to lose his driver's privileges. Yes.
Oops.
Whoopsies. If only we know how this works. I know. Blake Olson, your choice, sir. Oscar inspiration. Can you feel the love tonight? Or I saw it, so it's true.
Can
You feel the love tonight. This is a wonderful but yet heart-wrenching incident that is shocking people around the world. Recently happened to a zookeeper in Uzbekistan. He wanted to prove his love to his fiancée, so he decided to feel the love just like they did in Lion King, and he decided to go play with the lions. He's a 44-year-old overnight zookeeper at a private zoo in Uzbekistan. He filmed himself unlocking the cage of the 3 African lions and then wandering into the cage. They seem not excited about him being there, but not really aggressive. He calls one of them by its name, begins to almost pet it, and then he turns the camera on himself while talking to his fiancée. He doesn't know the lions start taking a lot more interest in him, and they attack him. The camera goes off. And when the morning shift arrives, they had eaten most of him.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not all of him, just most of him.
Horrible. That's
I know.
a horrible
Just
way
to show
go.
off to the fiance. I know. Not a good thing.
Do you keep
No.
the lions after that?
I think so. I guess. I don't know. It's a private zoo. Who cares?
Not their fault.
Yeah. Oh, final choice this morning, Mr. Hunt. Oscar inspiration or
Oscar.
That's true. Oscar inspiration. Hey, if you're Oscar the Grouch, here's an inspiration. There's an artist in London who's been living for the past 2 years in a dumpster bin. It was donated to him, but he said, hey, it works out pretty well. I'm on a plot where nobody charges me rent, costing me about $50 a month. So, hey, kids, buy your own garbage bin.
Denver.
Yes. Okay. Back
That's
to you,
the Mike
sir.
Johnston plan. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You're waking up and heading to work in the greatest country in history. Let's get after it. We got a whole hour planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson, Tony Kovaleski, Denver 7 chief investigator, is going to join us to give us a little update on this Las Vegas attacker. He's got roots here in Colorado. What have we learned over the weekend? So you'll get the latest news from Tony. Plus, we'll dive into the New Orleans updates, all that latest news in the 8 o'clock hour. Jimmy Sengenberger is going to join us to talk about the Jeffco chief of school that was being investigated for possessing child pornography, apparently committing suicide. But this was the number 3 ranking guy in Jeffco schools in charge of the Trusted Parent Initiative. Jimmy's got a great piece out in the Denver Gazette on that. We'll be talking with him. And then later in the show, Ian Escalante, executive director of RMGO, to give us some insight on potential gun restrictions. More of them. They passed 7 of them during the last legislative session. They've got more. Democrats got more planned for you down at the Colorado State Capitol. What is this year going to look like? You're not going to want to miss that conversation with Ian later in the show. But first, let's check in on news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 17 and clear outside in Denver. We are expecting a high of 38 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, President Biden is set to ban new offshore drilling along much of the U.S. coastline. The order will impact around 625 million acres of ocean along the Atlantic and Pacific coasts. But DJT just told Hugh Hewitt on Salem just minutes ago that he'll reverse that on day one and forget all that crap. Actually, a really good interview going on right now. Sleazy Joe.
Do you still believe he's a threat to democracy?
I think what he did was a genuine threat to democracy. By being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
Wow. With reporters in the East Room on Sunday, I have no idea what the objective was with that or what that had to do with anything. I think he was talking about immigration, and he threw that out there to him. Well, we know that he's been gone for at least 4 years, at least. He heads to New Orleans today to meet with family members of the victims of the terrorist attack. 14 people were killed by the ISIS sympathizer there. The results of the election that saw DJT win the White House are set to be certified by Congress today. Members of the House and Senate will meet to count the electoral votes from all 50 states and the District of Columbia, with Kamala Khan reading aloud each state's results. It marks the first time since 2001 that a vice president has presided over the certification of their own election loss. Plenty of security in D.C., of course. It's been 4 years since January 6, 2021.
You lost. Democrats, you lost because you lied about January 6th, calling it worse than Pearl Harbor or 9/11, instead of what January 6th really was, the FBI guided tour of the Capitol building.
Rob Schneider, it never gets old. Americans are paying their respects to the late President Jimmy Carter. The 39th president died last weekend in his home state of Georgia at the age of 100. His remains are now in the Georgia State Capitol, where he will lie in repose at the Carter Center until Tuesday morning. Carter's state funeral will take place Thursday at Washington National Cathedral. In Canada, Justin Trudeau may actually resign as early as today, the best thing could ever happen for Canadians and freedom-loving people. And the Broncos ended their 8-year playoff drought with a 38-0 victory over the Chiefs on Sunday.
Here's Nix rolling out, looking for the rookie record. Ball tipped and caught. Oh my gosh! The double deflection and a Denver touchdown.
So the Broncos enter the postseason for the first time since 2016, which led to a victory, of course, in Super Bowl 50. Denver hits the road, and they play the Bills in the opening round of the NFL playoffs on Sunday at 11 o'clock Denver time. Head coach Sean Payton, he gave one of the game balls to the ownership after the game.
I've been to a number of pro teams, but I told the players, you don't get to pick a lot of times where you end up, but you guys are at a good spot. And this is a group that cares about you. They talk about it. I hear it. And they're very consistent. And I think in today's pro sports, I think it's
hard to find. It's hard to find a great place to play like Denver, no doubt. But get to the point. Bo Nix, 26 of 29 for 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. Cortland Sutton's 32-yard catch in the first half put him over 1,065 yards receiving for that year. That netted him a $500,000 bonus from the Broncos. Several University of Colorado students are looking for temporary housing after a fire at an off-campus residence in Boulder. The fire was reported in the 1200 block of 13th Street early Sunday. Only a few of those living in the 17-unit building were there at the time of the fire due to the winter break. No injuries were reported, but 7 students were displaced. The company that manages the building hopes to finish repairs quickly so students can move back in. 15 in Boulder, 16 in Parker, 17 in Denver. It's Monday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. I want to talk to you about my friends over at QC Kinetics. Look, it's just not normal. The pain caused from chronic joint pain day after day. But some of you have dealt with that pain for so long, it's become your new normal. Short-term fixes are not working. Make the decision now to say no. You're not going to live with it. Get moving again with 2025 with help from QC Kinetics. QC Kinetics is the nation's leader in regenerative medicine, joint preservation. Yes, you can revitalize your joints with advanced ortho biological treatments at QC Kinetics. No steroids, no drugs, no surgery. This is the future of medicine, using an array of natural solutions like PRP to attack the pain from arthritis. Tens of thousands of people with pain have discovered these cellular treatments and are living life again without that constant pain in their joints. Want to learn more about how you can refresh your joints, get lasting relief with these amazing treatments? Call QC Kinetics for a free consultation. Maybe you started getting into your New Year's resolution, you went after and decided to start walking again, running, riding the bike, and you're feeling that joint pain. Well, let me explain to you how QC Kinetics works, because Joel in our office uses them, okay? They take out some of your blood, they spin it to get to that plasma, and then they inject the plasma, which is your own body's plasma, and has healing properties into your joints, and your body heals itself, okay? So no steroids, no drugs, no surgery. you can get active again with QC Kinetics. So why not give them a call, deal with joint pain now so you can make the most of this new year, and call QC Kinetics. The consultation's totally free. Okay, here's the phone number, 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. They have locations in Aurora, Superior, Highlands Ranch, and Colorado Springs. So over the weekend, more news coming out about Matthew Livelsberger, the 37-year-old Green Beret from Colorado Springs, who ended up driving the Cybertruck up to Trump Tower in Las Vegas, shooting himself, and then blowing up the truck. Apparently, he lit the fuse, shot himself, then the explosion took place. Well, he's left some notes behind on his cell phone about how he needed to cleanse his mind of the brothers he had lost and relieve himself of the burdens of the lives he took. Well, someone that was on top of investigating what was happening with Matthew and diving into trying to connect any dots there was Tony Kovaleski, Denver 7 chief investigator. He now joins us on the Jeff and Bill show. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. Obviously, a difficult story, a crazy start to our new year between New Orleans and Las Vegas, and yeah, a lot of questions and a lot of empathy. If you know what's written there, I didn't serve in the military. I can't imagine what that life is like, and the life to transition back to our world as we live it. But yeah, a lot of interesting things coming out. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So this guy gets in a Cybertruck and drives it all the way from Colorado Springs to Las Vegas. Some of us have made that trip. That's not an easy trip. That's not, heading to Loveland or something like that. That is, that's a pretty big commitment. And then does all this. And now we're starting to get a little bit of a motive with these notes. What are we learning from these notes?
Well, I think you've got a troubled individual, and then it happens at a time when 8 hours after New Orleans, and then we hear from federal agents and sources that there were some consistencies that made them concerned that they might have been acting together or with some grander plan on the start of the new year, right? I mean, both served in the military, both rented Toros. Or rented from Toro, and you look at that, and then it happens within 6-8 hours of each other. It raised a lot of red flags with the FBI, and then the notes that are coming out right now, it lays out a detail that the guy was clearly troubled.
Now, Tony Kovaleski, he's investigative reporter for Denver 7 KMGH, joining Jeff and Bill live. What do we know about the suspect's relationships with both, looks like ex-wife and also girlfriend? There seem to be some romantic entanglements. What do we know about those so far?
Well, we know it was a mess, and how that led to what he did. The notes are there, and talk to anybody. Relationships are complicated. You add in potential PTSD here, and this guy was a well-honored and intelligent guy, and the roadmap that he laid out for that last day. An electric vehicle where he could clearly be tracked. They had video of him at every one of the stations where he powered up. It wasn't a high-end, I don't want to get caught plan, and that's how it played out. And the FBI and federal agencies were able to connect the dots in the 24 to 48 hours afterwards, and what they were concerned about turned out not to be as big a concern. It's a sad story of a man who was troubled, a military vet.
And what about the fact that he is currently on duty? I mean, he's on a leave time at this. Are there any questions that you've seen so far of the military looking inwards and trying to figure out how they missed someone inside of their ranks that was going through this and wasn't even just considering suicide, but actually got past the ideation point of it. He had a plan. He was putting it together. He was making sure things were set up. Is the military, based on what your reporting is so far, have they done or are they starting any internal investigation on how this guy slipped through?
Well, I think it's consistent when something like this happens at this level that the military traditionally does a deep dive to understand what happened and why and what might we have missed. I would not be surprised. I'm not confirmed, but I would not be surprised if there were interviews with some of the closest people, supervisors, and all to say, the question you're asking, which is a great question, guys. How did we miss this?
Yeah, how did we miss this? Tony Kowaleski, Denver 7 chief investigator, KMGH, been in Denver for a long time. You also get to see his daughter on doing reports stuff, which is so cool. Also, Tony, want to talk to you about the notes. What do we know so far of the notes that he's left behind? There are two. I hesitate to say manifestos, but there are two. They're not even long. They're less. One's a half a page, another's a page long as far as writings. What did he tell us in those writings based on his motivations and the reason why he felt this is the only choice that he had left in his life?
Here's what I read, guys. I'll just give you my insight as an investigative reporter, and I think I kind of started with that, right? That transition from the world over there where you're killing people to real life and back and forth. And I've heard this from other veterans over my career doing interviews. I don't think anybody can understand what it's like if you haven't been there and done it. I mean, we have video games that kind of picture some of that, and some of those are out there, right? With what you're actually doing, it's not reality. These guys lived it. I mean, it's real. It's not turn your Xbox on and play. It's real, and so that's what I got from it. And I felt some empathy for the guy. That's just me personally. I don't know where you guys are on that, but what he did, he took his life. Fortunately, nobody else. The game plan, when you look at what he did with the explosion, it wasn't intended to take down Trump Tower. He didn't have enough, or the Trump Hotel rather. He didn't have enough in there to blow up anything significantly. He was a fair distance from the hotel. As we know, it didn't break any windows. So, a troubled guy in a difficult situation with his relationships and challenged with what he had to deal with coming to America and doing his job overseas.
Talking with Tony Kowaleski, Denver 7 chief investigator. Tony, as you point out, what's really interesting about this, because if you remember initially, right, the guy, all we learn is that a Cybertruck drives up and explodes outside of Trump Tower. And clearly, I think a lot of people went, well, this is terrorist motivated. But then
political statement,
right? And
8 hours after New Orleans, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Are these things tied together? Is this a coordinated attack? And now, then you learn that he was in the military and special forces. And I remember I was talking to former law enforcement from Las Vegas, going, well, if the guy wanted to level Trump Tower, he could have. He had the training to build, and he could have gone Timothy McVeigh, for instance, on the thing.
They don't let anybody into special forces, boys and girls. You're a smart guy with incredible training, and it's everything you're saying, and it laid out in a way. Again, those three issues that the FBI was looking at. If they both rented from the private rental site instead of going to a main facility, the hours, and that they did serve together in the military. But did they know each other? Did they not? I reported early on that they were looking very hard to see if there was a friendship because of their military connection. And as of now, that's unconfirmed.
Tony Kowaleski, thank you so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show, giving us the latest updates on what happened in Las Vegas. Thank you for your time, sir.
Jeff and Bill, always an honor. Call anytime.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Great to hear from cool. Tony on that. So, yeah. I mean, goodness. And then we're learning on the Louisiana stuff that the guy did surveillance, spent time with glasses that recorded videos and walked around and planned that all out.
And that's really weird because it's so strange. For the last couple of months, I have been on a smart AI glasses binge in my free time. Yeah, so I have been researching this. So as soon as they said he was using this, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what he's doing. And so yeah, that was crazy to see that he was actually going around and in some ways plotting, or at least thinking about where are the weaknesses. If I'm coming through here, and again, he's looking at this through a military lens, that if I'm going to do this, what happens here? What happens here? And I think that in some ways he may not have planned to, obviously 3 o'clock in the morning to be there on that street, but it became a crime of opportunity because of the lack of the security barriers. As soon as he got there and he had walked around, he was, I'm assuming, thinking there are going to be large barriers everywhere, and he's looking for weak points. He gets down to a certain area and there's like, they just got these wood things.
Yeah,
it's game time. Yeah.
So here's where I think the two big stories are going to come out of this. Okay. With regards to New Orleans, the big story is going to be security and the failure of the barricades, the failure of the police in the city to manage those barricades, make sure that they were installed properly, and they were protecting the safety of the people there.
And they have the best of the best barricades. They have the best you can buy, and they didn't want to put them up. Yeah, they are fantastic at doing what they do.
That'll be the growing story and scandal there. With regards to Las Vegas, it's going to be what has happened to a highly decorated guy like this to the point where he would do something like this. And there's still I still have so many questions, because that trip to Vegas is a trek, man. Like, you're driving through barren Utah for hours and hours and hours. And you're just thinking about all this. Like, you're like, what? And then you saw the email that he sent to the one podcaster about gravitational device, anti-gravitational hover devices, all that stuff. So I can't get there yet of going, this guy had a mental break, got in a car with a Cybertruck, drove hours and hours and hours to send a message.
Well, what would he be doing it for then? If he's driving hours and hours,
well, I don't know. I can't. I don't have theories. But I have questions. And if the guy was serious about wanting to implement change in this country, he's a Trump supporter, he would like to Elon Musk, and the email he sent to the podcasters, which raised concerns about Chinese anti-gravitational drones. Why end your life if you feel like you still have work to do?
Now, the thing I'm looking at is I'm wondering, and again, I haven't done any of the research. I'm just kind of spitballing here. I'm wondering if Vegas is the closest Trump Tower, because he wanted to combine the Elon Musk car with the Trump Tower as far as a statement. Because if I go back to some of the statements that we have from him online, some of, and again, I don't want to call him a manifesto, but some of what he calls his justification for doing this, he says, and I'm quoting here, military and vets move on DC starting now. Militias facilitate and augment this activity. Occupy every major road along federal buildings and the campus of federal buildings by the hundreds of thousands. Lock the highways down with semis after everybody gets in. Hold until the purge is complete. Try peaceful means at first, but be prepared to fight to get the Dems out of the federal government and military by any means necessary. They all must go, and a hard reset must occur for our country to avoid collapse. He goes on to say, consider this last sunset of 24 and my actions the end of our sickness and a new chapter of health for our people. Rally around Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride this wave to the highest hegemony for all Americans. We are second to no one. That's crazy. He's talking about setting up a roadblock around DC and purging Democrats by any means necessary.
And the guy that wants to do that then kills himself?
Yeah, because he said that this was going to be the alarm bell. Because he's not going to implement it himself. He's saying it's like that idea of the spark. It's like the guy that walked into the church in Charleston and shot the black congregants. He thought it was
because he thought he was going to spark a race war.
Yeah, same thing.
Wow.
And the people that showed up 4 years ago in January 6th thought they were going to be able to take over the government in some ways and put Trump back into power. So they thought that was the spark that was going to light the change. And the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers that showed up on January 6th in Washington, D.C. thought this was going to be a large change towards the entire governmental system in America, that they were there to foment the next revolution and the next evolution of the American populace. That's what they thought they were doing.
I guess I just don't, in this particular case, I still have questions, because if you wanted to be like a founding father, if you wanted to re-implement America's founding principles, and this was going to be this new chapter, and we're going to take it back, and we've seized Washington, D.C. Those guys didn't off themselves. Like that's just, that's where I have questions on this all. But I don't know. Give me a call. Tell me where I'm wrong. What do you think happened here, particularly in Las Vegas? What news are you learning that sticks out to you, that you raise questions about? The guy was emailing podcasters about concerns with our military. He wants to set off this kind of new wave of Americanism. And then he drives all the way to Vegas, sets off fireworks, and kills himself. I got more questions than I got answers at this point. Maybe he's just crazy, and you can't find rationale in any of this. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. I want to talk to you about my friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration. Look, I've had family members get their hair done, and this dramatically changed their lives, right? They looked younger, they felt younger, and it affected just about every aspect of their life, their business, their family, their romantic relationships, all because of getting hair treated with Advanced Hair Restoration. If the last couple of years have taught us one thing, it's to value the things we can control. And addressing hair loss is no exception. Our friends at Advanced Hair Restoration can reverse years or even decades of hair loss with their simple one-day treatment. Your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day, and your new hair is backed by the Advanced Hair Guarantee. It works for bald spots, receding hairlines, thinning hair, men, women, younger, wiser. Advanced Hair can address many different patterns of hair loss. Advanced Hair's top-rated physicians like Dr. Tanya Pauls have changed tens of thousands of people's lives, and now it's your turn. Schedule your free consultation today by calling 720-459-HAIR. And to celebrate the new year, get special financing, 250 free hair grafts, and $250 off. Value the things you can't control and start regrowing your own natural hair today. That's 720-459-HAIR, or become inspired with before and after pictures at advancedhair.com. We'll get to the phone lines. They're filling up. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking Matthew, the guy who drove the Cybertruck up to Trump Tower, Matthew Livelsberger. Some of the motivation is coming out through notes. He wanted to spark some type of response in Washington, D.C., a takeover of D.C., take over the highways, take over the federal buildings, a rebellion. That was the word I was looking for at 7:30 in the morning. A rebellion.
On a Monday, that's not fair.
Right.
All the big words.
So, that's it seems to be what he wants to invoke here. But I still have so many questions. If you really wanted to revoke or invoke a revolution, but why kill yourself? You're a soldier, a highly decorated soldier. Why drive all the way to Vegas? I just have more questions, and maybe we'll never learn them. But let's go to the phone lines. Kim, Denver, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
So yeah, I think it sounds like you had missed perhaps that he was cheating on his wife, and his wife probably kicked him out. I mean, it sounds like they definitely broke up, and that's why he was out of the house. And he drove all the way because you were questioning why he would drive all the way to Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Where I've lived there, made the trip 8 years back to family in Denver, and not a bad drive, actually. I liked it. So, but it is long, 15 hours, I would say. But he went down there, I suppose, to bury his problems. I mean, there are casinos there. My guess is it was a last-minute decision, like, hey, this isn't really doing it for me, and grabbed some fireworks and what was it? Gasoline. I mean, he's just trying. The other thing, he rented this thing. I mean, it's probably part of that dream of, hey, I might as well just rent this thing and go to Las Vegas because it'll be fun to drive, and I've always wanted to drive one. I mean, all of these things would be in his notes, is my guess.
Kim,
I'm
some
not sure.
Some of that was in his note. He did text, and I don't remember if it's the ex-wife or the girlfriend, but texted them how cool it was driving the Cybertruck. In fact, and it stuck with me because I'm a comic book geek. He texted that he felt like Batman. So you may have something there. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm sure the FBI know where he went. Like if he played blackjack somewhere. I mean, they know exactly where he, from his phone. I don't know how long he was there, but even if he was there just for a night and then just said, hey, to hell with this,
Well, right now, I think the reporting is that he just drove straight there, drove around Vegas, and then went right to Trump Tower and then blew up his Cybertruck, killed himself and blew up the Cybertruck. So,
okay.
So he wasn't letting off any steam. And I wonder, too, what's going to come out about what his unit knew, what his commanders in the Army knew. We haven't heard any information on that yet.
Yeah, I think Tony wasn't pressed hard enough for the information that he might know, since he did investigative reporting on, that's just my guess. I've not even heard of these notes, but and apparently you have. Where did you see the notes? Where did you read about that?
They've been online. There are a couple of them that have been published online. There are a couple of websites I went to, and the two short manifestos, and there have been some other people that have been publishing emails they received, and some text messages have leaked out through some reporting as well. It's a various number of places. But if you look for the notes, you can find them online, the two letters. But again, they're easy to read. Okay. One's half a page, and the other one's barely a page.
Oh, so nothing about going to the casinos at all?
Not that I've seen, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Right. That's just my theory. Just wanted to share that with you because it makes total sense to me.
Yeah,
anyway.
And he sent a letter to a podcaster, Sam Shoemate, who was a retired U.S. Army intelligence officer, got an email. And it's just long. This one's longer. It gets into DOD, DEA, CIA, and the idea of these non-gravity flying drones that China has, and they're the reason we're seeing them all over the Atlantic. They've been released from submarines. It gets, I mean, maybe he's right about this. It gets very kind of conspiratorial and in detailed, but I still am struggling with, okay, the guy, I think there were probably personal problems there. I think you're exactly right, Kim, that he had personal problems with his family, but I'm still just struggling how it all concluded. That if he's concerned about these drones, if he's concerned about the direction of this country, it ends up with him driving 15 hours to Las Vegas, up to Trump Tower, shooting himself and setting off fireworks. And I guess I kind of get the sense that, all right, he's trying to get attention here, and maybe that's part of all of it. But if he wanted to save America, I'm not sure how killing himself achieves that.
Well, no, I think he just was really down about what had happened. And his friends, if there's a loss of his friends plus the loss of his wife, that's tremendous loss. And that alone would lead to a suicide, in my opinion. I don't understand the Trump Tower thing. That was very suspicious. So that's why. And the other is the connections, all the connections, like with this guy, the other guy in New Orleans. Did they say, did Kovalevsky say he talked to the guy?
No. Kovalevsky is just doing reporting, and some of his initial reporting was for a time being they were at the same.
No, I meant the Las Vegas guy. Did he talk to the Louisiana? Okay. So there's still no connection.
No connection.
None that we've seen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kim, great call. Really
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Have a
Kim's
good Monday.
line will be open 303-696-1971. Billy, why don't you tell us a little bit about Balanced Well Space here?
Yeah, I want to tell you about friends of mine that have made an amazing difference in my life. You know, as I was growing older, I thought that things just started to hurt. That's what I saw in the older people in my life as I was growing up. That's just what goes on, that eventually things just hurt and then you die, type of thing. Now, I hate to be so dark here on a Monday morning, but yet again, it's really cold and it's a Monday morning and we're all going back to work after having a holiday vacation. But I want to talk to you about how you can start this new year feeling better than ever. Imagine later on this year, you're doing things you never thought possible. When it warms up, you're hiking in the mountains. Maybe you're running around with the grandkids, the kids. You're doing that 5K you never thought possible. But first, you got to take the first step. You got to talk to my friends at Balanced Well Space. Here's the reason. Balanced Well Space offers integrative medicine. What that means is you get a whole bunch of different treatments all under one roof. You can get trigger point injections, wave therapy, regenerative care, physical rehabilitation, neuropathic care, chiropractic care, and a whole bunch of other Star Trek level stuff that's all non-invasive. But the best part about it is it maximizes your body's own ability to heal. They use a little bit of the sciencey stuff, but it really is your body's ability to put itself back together. They're just giving it a little boost. Talk to them today, balancewellspace.com, balancewellspace.com, to find out how they can make a difference in your life. They've got a brand new office right across the street from Hangar 2 in Lowry, plenty of parking. And the best thing is when you show up, you talk to Dr. Julie, Dr. Jess, they do a personal pain evaluation. What hurts? It's basically what it is. Then they go through, they do all the poking, the prodding, they take the pictures, they do the x-rays, and then they put together a personalized pain plan that is focused on you, your pain, and getting you back to doing the things that you want to do that you're no longer doing anymore. And here's the cool part. Every couple of weeks, they reevaluate your progress. They come back and they talk to you and they do some tests. That's the difference maker. I'm sure you have a medical team working on things that hurt in your life, but when's the last time they all got together and talked about you? Do you think in the last month, 2 months, 3 months, they've had a Zoom call? Do you think they've exchanged emails? Have they gone even on a conference call? Anything? No, they haven't. So while they may be doing a good job, what we know is they're not all in the same boat, rowing in the same direction to get you feeling better. So this is a piecemeal approach. I'm talking about integrative medicine where everybody's on the same team, all taking away your pain and getting you back to doing the stuff that you used to do. You can do it again. I'm doing things that are absolutely nuts. I was up in the mountains digging out snow in front of the house because we got some repairs that have to be done up there. But again, I'm digging out the snow a couple of feet in front of the house, middle of winter. Me with my bum back, my stupid bum shoulder, and my wonky left knee. My left knee, I'm regenerating the meniscus as we speak. It's now my stronger knee. That's the one I lean on. And my back doesn't hurt me at all anymore. Find out how Balanced Wall Space can make that difference in your life. Let them take away the pain, but you got to take the first step. BalancedWellSpace.com. Reach out today, BalancedWellSpace.com. And when you do, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill program, because it sure does help us out.
That's great to hear, Bill. We'll continue jam-packed phone lines coming up. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking, everything from January 6th and the pardons that may be coming today on the 4-year anniversary to it, to Matthew Livelsberger, the guy who drove the cyber truck to Las Vegas. What was behind all that? Let's go back to the phone lines. Janet, Wyoming. Good morning, Janet. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Good morning. I wanted to talk about Matthew and take it in a slightly different direction because of having at one time been suicidal myself. And, typically you guys know I text and I don't call in, but if this call can help anybody, when you say, Jeff, that you don't understand, and thank God you don't, seriously, because what it was for me was that it was a gradual buildup, and this was years ago, so I'm fine now. But it was a gradual buildup of I need to escape my situation. I've got to escape, and it progressed from I'm just going to leave the situation to I can't leave the situation, and I couldn't talk about it. I was a pastor's wife, and as a pastor's wife, you can't talk about mental illness, having an issue, you just can't. And I don't know what this guy's situation was, but he would have lost his job had he talked to anybody about it, or been afraid that was going to happen. And the thing is it becomes incessant, and there is so much pressure for me. I'm just speaking anecdotally. I'm not educated in this. This is just my own firsthand experience.
Yeah. And Jenna, I'm not discounting his depression at all. I'm not saying I don't understand PTSD or the suicidal tendencies or anything like that. What I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around is, okay, if he wanted to commit suicide, the putting the fireworks, putting the gas into the Cybertruck, driving 15 hours, writing a manifesto, going through all of that, wanting to set off a rebellion, a revolution in Washington, D.C., wanting to do all that and going through all of that work and then killing himself. That's where I'm not able to connect the dots. Maybe you can help me, Janet.
Well, maybe that in his convoluted, confused mental state, maybe that was his way of giving it meaning. And that was the only thing he could do that was the only way he saw out. And, he was a soldier, he was a Green Beret. And I mean, we can't understand because we can't be inside his mind, but maybe that was the only, in a very convoluted way, maybe that was patriotic for him. Because he was like, I'm going to draw attention to this. This gives my life at least something, will give it meaning. And I don't know, but that was the thing that came to my mind was he did it to draw attention. He couldn't stand it any longer. And he clearly, like you guys said, he could have blown up the whole thing. He could have done so much more damage to people. But Trump's incoming, president, and this was where he could get to. And I don't know, my guess is just a guess.
Question for you, and I want to thank you so much for being so personally honest on a radio show that's broadcasting across an entire major city. What was it for you that changed, that helped get you out of the hole that you had found yourself in?
That is okay. It's going to be a little intense for just a couple minutes. So if people, I don't want, I'm going to be more specific. So if people don't want to hear more specific, I'm giving them a chance to not listen to more specific. I was having dreams where people were trying to kill me, and it for a long time. And what hit the point where I finally told my husband what was going on was they caught me and were ready to kill me, and I was so relieved and glad. And so and I had a plan and everything. The only thing that tethered me was my kids, and I knew my kids could not get another mom. And so that's when I finally told him. He was deeply unsympathetic and ended up quitting the ministry, blamed it on me, had an affair, and over the course of 2 years would not let me go to therapy or counseling because it would reflect poorly on him as a pastor. And so he did quit, walked away from Christianity, had an affair, left me, and that's when I started to get better. Was when my entire situation fundamentally changed. And I have to let you know, that was in the 90s. I love Jesus with all my heart. With all my heart. I love my Lord and Savior. I love him. And he brought me through, and it took years and years and a lot of decisions and work on my part, but God is faithful. And so yeah, my life didn't go the way I thought it was going.
But Janet,
rarely does anybody.
I mean, I gotta tell you, you are so brave, and I love that you are still here. You are making a difference. God is using you. Thank you for being so honest.
And thank you, Joe.
Speaking some encouragement, providing some guidance on that. We'll
Thank you so
continue.
much.
We've got full phone lines. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader. This is 710 KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You're waking up in the greatest country in history. We're off and running. We got a whole hour planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. We're going to continue with the phone lines. We're talking about Matthew Livelsberger. This is the Green Beret and the main suspect in the Cybertruck attack in Las Vegas that took place. He had sent a manifesto-like email to a retired U.S. Army intelligence officer. And I'm not discounting PTSD, family problems. In fact, early on, I said on X that it seemed to be what was motivating both these guys was breakups in their families, and something we should talk more about. What I'm struggling with is the manifesto, the desire for a revolution, the trying to raise awareness of what China may be doing off the coast of the Atlantic seaboard with these drones. This is all stuff Matthew wrote about. And then getting in a Cybertruck that he rents, driving 15 hours, putting fireworks in the back of the Cybertruck, killing himself, putting a manifesto on notes, setting off fireworks. It's just like I'm just having a hard time pulling it all together.
And the drone thing for me was weird because he didn't, when I got to that part, it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And the reason why the drone thing didn't make a lot of sense is because, he talked about it being clandestine, etc. But then why would the Chinese put the blinky lights on them? It seems odd.
Yeah.
If you were to do something,
we talked with the drone guys, like you could just turn the lights off on these things.
So that was the thing that for me, I was like, hang on. When he's like, this is nefarious, this is China doing, why is China allowing us to see him then? That was one of those times in which it gave me a little more insight into where he was thinking that maybe his logic machine wasn't firing on all cylinders. I'm just guessing.
And that might just be it. Like you're just not going to connect dots with somebody that is suffering this bad with broken mental health. So there's not going to be a reason there. Just got questions. That's all. Let's go back to the phone lines. Chris Lakewood. Good morning, Chris. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
What's going on, Jeff? What's going on, Bill? I just followed you on X, and that's how I found out about this show.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Hey, fantastic.
Thanks for doing that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the Matthew thing. I'm ex-military myself. I agree with you. It does not make any sort of sense, and it is very bizarre that a Trump supporter, I think he's a Trump supporter.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That would do something like that. Unless he was just, I was in the military, not like him, he was like to the max, right? Probably saw a lot of things, right? And so I'm a little paranoid myself of certain things. So I could only imagine how he felt. Like he felt like America was crumbling, or whatever, and all these drones. I was just in New Jersey. My wife's from there. I saw no drones, by the way. I saw a bunch of aircraft with red and green light. Come on, man. Let's be, there's a meme out there, right? What a drone looks like in New Jersey, and it's just like every sort of aircraft you can imagine.
Yes.
And it's just different out there. I grew up in the Midwest, and, that's obviously next to a major city or whatever. But I also think part of the problem on X is people just try to sensationalize things and, get that monetization going or whatever. And I think it's highly misleading, and it's not helping us figure anything out. And
Chris,
also just a caveat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you this. First of all, thank you so much for your service. I sure appreciate it. Thank you for protecting the freedoms we all enjoy in this country. I want to ask you this, and because I was on malaria medication one time when I was doing work in Africa, and those meds, dude, those took me to places that were the weirdest. I got so paranoid, and to a point where I remember turning to my wife. I was like, I'd just rather get malaria at this point than deal with these meds anymore. Do you think it's some of this mental health stuff coming out of the military, and you mentioned being a little paranoid yourself, stems from all the shots they give you, all the medicine, all that stuff?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just to piggyback what Janet said earlier. It's the pressure. I mean, Green Berets are, they're the big boys. They, everybody wants to be a Green Beret, right? But it's just the mental things, like the gymnastics, alongside with being in the military. It's not like it used to be. You can't just like fight it out anymore. It's a bunch of paperwork. You can't say things because you offend somebody. You got all, I don't know what kind of radio show this is, but it's the military is becoming this sort of woke organization now.
Yeah.
We have trans people demanding things and things of that nature. And I love everybody. I'm super libertarian, but you do your thing and do not impose whatever you're trying to do onto me. And let's just leave it at that. But I don't think so. But I wanted to ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'm not setting you up or anything. I don't know if you're Christian or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think you are. I think I read that about you. I called Gino on this other radio show a couple weeks back, and the question is this: can you be critical of Israel as a Christian without, what is your thoughts on that? Because I've had conversations with some of my friends, and actually more like two, and it seems like if you sort of critique our foreign policy over there, that you just become labeled an anti-Semite, and I don't think that's right. I think it's bullshit. I think it's just...
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope you can give us a call again.
Chris, I'll answer Chris's question. We just, as a public radio show, we can't say those words.
Yeah, I just got to say, Chris, I appreciate you, and I hope you call and keep listening. You just said one of the words the FCC frowns on. And so when that happens, I have to dump that portion of the program, and I also have to cut off the phone line. I can't continue a conversation with you because of how the system works, that I need to have that. So I apologize. But, Jeff, I'd love to have your opinion on that.
Real quick on that, absolutely, you can criticize anybody's foreign policy. That's not a problem at all. There's kind of a non-rational hatred towards Jews that I think is always problematic. That's called anti-Semitism, and it's just kind of like blaming the Jews for all the problems, right? Or unfairly characterizing them. That's anti-Semitism. But if you're going to criticize, if you're going to be like, the attacks, particularly in the West Bank, or this particular attack I don't like, or whatever it is, of course, that's just a rational foreign policy discussion.
But what do you do with the statement that he had talking about if you do criticize Israel, some people immediately label you as anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish? What do you do with that?
It's not fair.
Well,
but isn't
because
you can have honest conversations about foreign policy.
I'm not. Again, and this is the thing is, I'm not certain at times we can, because during the previous election cycle, one of the things in the jacket that was put on the Democrats was the fact that they weren't supporters of Israel. Donald Trump went out and was saying that if you're Jewish, I can't see why you would ever vote for the Democrats because they don't support Israel. The Democrats do support Israel.
Because
they have a difference of opinion.
You have Tim Hernandez and Elizabeth Epps, who, and I spent 4 days with Palestinian protesters. Like, there's an element within the progressive left that is just non-rational anti-Semitic. Like, they just hate Jewish people. And I saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
So
isn't there an element isn't there also an
left.
Element on the far right?
Oh,
very far right. So I think
Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, at the very, very extremes on both parties, there are, and so that's why I agree with you that it's a wrong thing to say at somebody, but both sides use it.
To Chris's point, though, no, you can have honest foreign policy discussions, and not everything that any country ever is going to do is perfect.
Oh gosh, no.
So
no, not at all. Yeah.
But I think what's wrapped up in all that, and we're going off on a tangent here, but what's wrapped up in that is a failure to recognize the great contributions Jews have made to Western civilization.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right, like they just totally ignore that.
Yeah,
like you wouldn't have Western civilization without the Jews.
And in fact, they push a lot of the negativity and say they're responsible for all the negatives. Whatever the negatives are, doesn't matter what you feel personally the negatives are in your current situation or Western civilization. They always point back to the Jews. And I appreciate a call from Spencer off air. I wanted to point out something that Chris had said, talked about whether or not he was a Trump supporter. Now, according to the bomber that came from Colorado Springs that is in Vegas, he held, quote, no ill will towards Mr. Trump, but did in the writings say that we should rally around Trump, Musk, Kennedy, and ride the wave in order to save America or the country's screwed. So not necessarily a full-throated, red MAGA hat guy, but was saying that the country did need to support him.
All right, let's go to news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, guys. I watched that Sean Ryan interview, and I think I sent it to Jeff on Friday
you did.
or Saturday, and I'm listening to this thing, and I'm way deep into it. But right when he said he wasn't under any duress or fear for his life or something like that, I kind of had to just go back to, he's just dealing with what a lot of soldiers deal with, So it's fascinating. It really is. But you can go down the rabbit hole quickly with that subject. 18 and mostly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 38 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story today marks 4 years since January 6th. The Capitol riots. Some DJT supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol as Congress met to certify the election victory of Sleazy Joe and Kamala Khan. 5 people were killed and lawmakers were evacuated after the rioters breached the Capitol building. And there's evidence that there may have been numerous cases of entrapment there. Stay tuned on that subject. DJT's White House victory is set to be certified by Congress today. Members of the House and Senate will meet at 11 this morning to count the electoral votes from all 50 states and the District of Columbia, with Kamala Khan reading aloud each state's results. That'll be fun. Since 2021, Congress has reformed the laws to make it more difficult for members of Congress to challenge a state's electors. President Biden will travel to New Orleans today to meet with those impacted by the New Year's Bourbon Street terrorist attack. He'll be accompanied by the First Lady, Jill Biden, and they will spend time with grieving relatives as well as local and state officials. The attacks on ISIS sympathizer, of course, plow a pickup truck into the crowd celebrating the holiday, killing 14 people and injuring dozens more. Reportedly, the terrorist bought a gun in Texas in November. In a Sunday press briefing, FBI officials said that Shamsuddin Jabbar, a U.S. citizen who lived in Houston, traveled to Egypt and Canada before the attack. The FBI says Jabbar bought a semi-automatic rifle from an individual in Arlington on November 19th. In Canada, Justin Trudeau may actually, believe it or not, resign as early as today. Ukraine's president...
Dude, by the way, I was watching a video of Trudeau's mom.
Oh, is that right?
Dude.
Wow.
She was a Looney Tune. So she marries this guy that's like 30 years older than her, who's I think he was the prime minister at one point or not, but
yes,
she would only commit to spending a certain amount of days with her kids.
Really?
Yeah. She was like, we need to throw off the shackles of all the old way of living. And I see my kids, about 5 times every 2 weeks or so.
Oh man. I saw his brother on an interview with Tucker. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, that one's a great one. It was about 3 months ago. If you can look that up, Jeff, I think that would be.
I'll check that out.
It is fascinating.
But I saw the rumor that like the mom may have Justin Trudeau may be Fidel Castro's son.
Yes.
I'm starting to believe.
No, I know. I can't keep up with this stuff. I can't. And you don't know what's true, what's fake. the rumors. But if you can check that.
What do they talk about?
Oh, him. And this guy basically exposes him. It's his brother. And I'm telling you, he looks like a nut. He looks like a loon. But after about 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, wow, I trust this guy. I mean, he went into Trudeau's childhood and the life and his mom, like who you're talking about. I haven't seen anything with her, but that doesn't surprise me. But if you can look it up, it is fascinating. Probably 3 months ago, I'm guessing. So Ukraine's President Zelensky happy the DJT is about to take office.
It won't be long because Europe will be looking at us and we'll be looking at Trump. And by the way, I now see that when I talk about something with Donald Trump, whether we meet in person or we just have a call, all the European leaders always ask, how was it? This shows the influence of Donald Trump. And this has never happened before. With an American president, I tell you from my experience, this also gives you confidence, that he can stop this war.
And that's the interpreter, of course. The Broncos ended their 8-year playoff drought with a 38-0 victory over the Chiefs on Sunday.
Here's over to Mims. Touchdown in front. Mims, you got it, Tony. Touchdown, Broncos. They had 2 last week. Mims, 2 more today.
Broncos entered the postseason for the first time since 2016, and that led to a Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 50. Denver hits the road, and they take on the Bills coming up this Sunday at 11 o'clock. Let's see. They gave the one of the game balls to ownership. Bo Nix was 26 of 29, 321 yards, 4 TDs, no interceptions, no sacks. Incredible game in the retro throwback orange uniforms. A report of a bear attack in Summit County has now turned into an investigation into possible swatting. The county sheriff's office says a caller reported the attacker at a condominium in Silverthorne late last month. The caller said the bear broke into a rental unit and injured her son, and that they were on their way to the emergency room. Investigators found no sign of a bear in the area, called the number listed on the report. The woman who answered said she didn't call 911 and didn't know anything about the bear attack. She also said she had already talked to other law enforcement agencies asking about 911 calls made from her number. 15 in Superior, 16 in Lone Tree, 18 in Denver. It's Monday. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A winter weather advisory is in effect from 11 o'clock tonight through noon tomorrow. Partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies with snow becoming likely and lows near 20. Snow likely Tuesday through the morning mainly. Partly cloudy by afternoon, cold, highs only low 20s, 3 to 6 inches of new snow for Denver by Tuesday noon. Lows Tuesday night, quite cold, single digits with areas of fog. Morning fog Wednesday, then sunny, highs 30s, teens Wednesday night, snow showers again Thursday, highs 30s. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center. A winter weather advisory is in effect from 11 o'clock tonight through noon tomorrow. Partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies with snow becoming likely and lows near 20. Snow likely Tuesday through the morning mainly. Partly cloudy by
Welcome back to the
cold,
Jeff and Bill show. You probably saw this news. This is just shocking, but I think it's going to get deeper and deeper. David Weiss, who was the chief of schools in Jefferson County, right? Fired on December 19th. And he was fired for an investigation that was being done for his possession of child sexual assault material, essentially child pornography, but I think it's even worse than that. I think this is like the violent stuff. And while visiting family in Maryland over the holidays, he died in an apparent suicide. Now, the personnel matter has become a case study in institutional betrayal and the erosion of public trust. And doing a deep dive on this is Jimmy Sengenberger. You know the name, on this station for many years now, an investigative columnist with the Denver Gazette, doing great work over there. But this was a guy, David Weiss, who was not only an administrator in Jeffco schools, but the guy who pushed the entire trusted adult concept and was in charge of a lot more than just being kind of an administrator behind the scenes. So there's more brewing there, plus how the administration notified parents about all this. To give us some insight with a great piece in the Denver Gazette, Jimmy Sengenberger, thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, guys, good to be back, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, to you too. So, let's start with your piece here. This David Weiss was a lot more than just kind of a guy working in Jeffco schools. He was in charge of a lot there.
Yeah, this is the number 3 ranked official in the district. You have the superintendent, you have a person right behind her, and then number 3 is chief of schools, who was David Weiss, and he was responsible for, among other things, the 11 community superintendents that oversee the schools in the district and the district accountability committee. He was one of the 2 liaisons to that, which is a body that consists of basically parents and community members to provide some oversight of the schools and how they are in the district implementing or not implementing their what they call the Unified Improvement Plan, so a lot of the academic stuff, and a number of other responsibilities that he had, including implementing this concept they have in the district and have been expanding of a trusted adult. And I don't know about you guys, but I had a number of people I can look back, and I mentioned one of these teachers at my time, especially in middle and high school, where I always felt, okay, I can trust this adult, but it was naturally developed and it was something that made sense versus an institutionalized concept where they're trying to push on you, find a trusted adult, and put it out in a variety of different ways. And it makes things very, very different. And then you find out that the guy who was implementing this policy and the approach of trusted adults is somebody who was being investigated for what the sheriff's offices are calling child sexual assault material.
Now, we're talking with Jimmy Sengenberger. He's a columnist with the Denver Gazette. Part of the controversy over all this is how Jeffco schools notified parents about what was happening. Give us some insight on that.
Well, if you were paying attention to the news media early on over the holidays, just as you were going to break, then you might have heard about it. If you weren't, well, then you didn't hear about it probably, unless somebody whispered it to you, because the district literally sent nothing to parents or to staff as far as any sort of notice via email or anything over the holidays until after David Weiss's death and in an apparent suicide. And at that point, the media had gotten word of the investigation, what it was about, and about the death. And so their hand was kind of forced. And so it wasn't until late last week, Wednesday or Thursday, that they put out a statement to the families that was, in my view, coldly bureaucratic. It wasn't like they were acknowledging the emotional aspect of this, the concern that they might have for kids' safety, because this is far from, just in 2024 alone, the first and only issue of allegations of sexual misconduct among staff. There have been at least 3 or 4 incidents total from 2024 that we know about in public of various kinds. And so this is something very serious that parents should be reassured on, and the district did not provide that until, well, pretty much a week later.
Talking to Jimmy Sengenberger, columnist with the Denver Gazette. Is this pressure working? Is Jeffco trying to address this? Are parents speaking up and calling and trying to get more information, trying to understand Did David Weiss have contact with students? Are some of the allegations coming from students in the district? I mean, all of that seems to be just totally absent from this conversation.
Well, so some of this we don't know, and it does seem reasonable that the district wouldn't share, and they might not know some details. I mean, there is an active investigation going on, and it's not exactly the purview of the district to give more information than the sheriff's office will provide, but that's not even the point, though. The issue is that on December 19th, I believe it was, David Weiss was fired from the job, and it was because of a very serious investigation. And it wasn't until after he died that word went out of what the investigation was about broadly, big picture, which I think they could have provided from the district. And then to provide any sort of detail as to, you know, what we're doing proactively and how we're taking this seriously, or any semblance of that, was not provided. As for parents speaking up, especially about this trusted adult concept, we've been seeing that more and more. A couple of months ago, I produced a column for the Denver Gazette writing about a school social worker, middle school social worker, who was alleged to have had a sexual relationship with a now 14-year-old student. And that individual the employee had been arrested. And so when that came out, there was a lot of discussion more about this trusted adult concept. Lindsay Dadko and the folks at Jeffco Kids First have been speaking out and expressing concerns about this, and are now calling to just do away with the concept. And I think that's right. And I think you're finding people across the political spectrum who are increasingly recognizing, you know what? This isn't something we should institutionalize and force on kids. It needs to be developed naturally, which is the case for trust. Trust always is earned, not forced.
Jimmy Sangenberger joining Jeff and Bill live. Jimmy, you know, is a longtime host here at KNUS. He's out doing some other stuff. Got to shout out. People enjoyed you filling in for Ross the other day, and caught you doing some other stuff over at the other places, which are fantastic. It's good to hear your voice on the air. And also regular columnist for the Denver Gazette. Make sure you check out his stuff in the Gazette. It is top notch. Now, I want to talk about that trust with you for a second, Jimmy. Is the district is coming forward and saying, you know, here are the trusted adults. From my purview, because of how the district handled this, I don't trust the adults running Jeffco. I don't trust the adults running the Jeffco schools, because in my mind, if I'm a parent, you have violated my trust on two levels. The first being the fact that this person was able to navigate the district in a way that they could get into this position of power, that through all the time they were there, you couldn't find out that he was interested in stuff like this. He was interested in child porn. Nothing happened. None of your background checks, none of your investigations, no coworkers, nothing. That worries me based on the efficacy of what Jeffco does in order to verify these are trustworthy individuals. And then Jeffco schools, if I'm not in the district, but if I was in the district, they have violated my trust by not being honest with me about what was going on. Because as soon as they fired him, you knew it was larger than just a routine investigation. And by them keeping it quiet, if I'm a parent, I don't trust the district anymore, ever.
Yeah. A couple things that I think that's the case for a lot of parents, hence why the headline of the column yesterday in the Denver Gazette is a breakdown of trust at Jeffco schools. To the first point, I think the problem with Jeffco in that regard is really about the cultural aspect of this, that there's something going on in Jeffco that people are like, wait, why do we keep seeing these stories about sexual misconduct, whether it's involving students or perverse stuff online, these kinds of allegations that we're getting about Weiss or have gotten about other teachers? What is the rot in Jeffco schools? And then when it comes to notifying parents about all of this, I mean, absolutely. When you have a situation where normally the practice, Bill, is that Jeffco will put somebody on leave when they have an issue come up. Like, for example, I mentioned that school social worker, Chloe Castro's her name. She was put on leave before ending up being terminated or anything like that. in this case, they immediately terminated David Weiss, or at least we think it was immediate. We don't know how soon they knew about this before the firing, but they fired him rather than setting him on to leave for a period of time, which should say a lot and should have resulted in, at the very least, a message to parents saying, here's what we can tell you. We fired our number 3. We're taking this very seriously. We care about your kids' safety. Any semblance of that. And the only time they finally released something was basically 2 weeks after the firing, and with very little sympathy, if any, for the parents and the community members.
Yeah, it for me, it reinforces the reason that everyone hates the teachers unions, because the teachers unions come across as a CYA organization. And I believe that the Jeffco school system in this instance is coming across as a CYA institution, that they are more worried about themselves and protecting themselves, because you are 110% right. If when Weiss was gone, they came out and said, we terminated him because of an investigation into this. This is not tolerated inside our district. We are doing number 1, number 2, and number 3 in order to rebuild your trust and to make sure this never happens again. Then they're ahead of the story. They seem proactive. And as a parent, you seem assuaged based on even your doubt and anger at the district. Instead, they kept it from you. They still want your child to come to them and talk to them and tell them if mom and dad are doing something at home they shouldn't. They want your child to come to them and say, hey, I might be a different gender. They want your child to come to them and understand that those that those teachers are safe, are people you can talk to, that you can trust. Yet in this instance, the school system chose not to trust the parents. It is maddening to think that there were people that are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars that are in a meeting, and it seems like going around the whiteboard in that meeting was, how do we protect our rear ends? Not how do we protect these kids? It's disgusting.
Yeah, at the very least, I make this mention because in a few days we will see the funeral for the late President Jimmy Carter, and we all have our criticisms of his presidency without a doubt, although I do believe on the whole he was a good man, and so we will recognize his passing very soon with the funeral. But he, in 1979, you'll recall, what is known as the malaise speech, where he warned of a crisis of confidence. And he never used that word malaise, but the speech is still a symbol of out-of-touch, tone-deaf presentation from a leader who really misread the moment. But I have to at least acknowledge that Carter, at a minimum, tried to be honest and forthright. He just misread how he should have handled that moment. In this case, the superintendent, Tracy Dorland, and the board president, Mary Parker, who both put out that email to parents that I mentioned that went out last week, 2 weeks after the firing, they didn't try to do that at all. They tried to conceal the reality. They weren't very open and honest, but they also weren't trying to connect and show any sort of understanding of what the families must be going through, especially because this is a guy who, as one of the 2 liaisons to the District Accountability Committee, worked very closely with parents and community members who got to know him and feel like they were misled into thinking this is the guy, even by him, that he was really good at putting on a face and misleading them into thinking he was very supportive and all this. But you can imagine how parents are feeling right now, especially if they were on the DAC and had to work with him, and the district doesn't show any consideration or trust for them with that.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Jimmy Sangenberger joining Jeff and Bill live, columnist for the Denver Gazette. Also, Bill and talk show hosted here in other places when they call him, but it's good to hear him on the air. I'm just poking fun at you there, Jimmy. Now, the thing that I think you hit on the nail on the head there is the distrust of the parents. The parents imagine what a parent is going through when they find out that this person that could be in their child's lives or even in their own life is doing things and is involved in child pornography. The parent first is going to be revolted and going to be angered, but then they also have to look through their own decision making. They're looking at the idea that Did they, one, place their own child in danger by getting close to this guy, or did they facilitate because they got close to this individual? Did they facilitate them and give them the cover of finding other victims? And that's something the district needs to address right away and needs to come out and really have a front-facing solution, because that's how you handle this in a PR firm. You don't sit there and pull back and turtle in and say, no, don't tell anybody anything and keep it from them, because then it just seems like you are compounding secrets on top of secrets on top of secrets. And as you outline in your column, you lose trust immediately.
Yeah, and I'll just say, from my understanding as chief of schools, he had, and this is something you would expect the district to stress to try and reassure parents, that he himself had very little contact with students because his role was not with the students, but was with people who are overseeing, particularly community superintendents and principals and what have you. And that should provide some reassurance to parents as far as the interactions with children from David Weiss. But you would expect the district to think, you know what, why don't we give a little more detail on what this position entails, what we can tell you about how he could or could not have had any sort of interaction with students in the district, so on and so forth. But when you hide, as you were getting at, I think very well, Bill, when you hide the ball here and you try to act like there's nothing there, and then the only reason, at least it seems, that you finally go public with this is that the sheriff's office in Maryland puts out a statement to the media saying, hey, this guy's been under investigation for, quote, child sexual assault material, as you were talking about, child pornography, and he just died, and we're investigating the cause of death and all of this. And then that leads the next day the district to go, okay, here's our statement that we're sending out to parents, but we're not giving those kinds of details that we're talking about, and we're not giving you your reassurance. That is not only tone deaf, but it is an abuse of the trust. It is taking it for granted as opposed to trying to build or foster a trusting relationship with the community and parents.
Talking to Jimmy Sengenberger. You can follow him on X at Seng Center, SENG Center, CENTER over there. Jimmy, there's a lot more to this guy's past as well that they're going to have to go investigate. He was a principal at Westgate Elementary School for 5 years. His LinkedIn, by the way, his page is totally still public. Assistant principal in Douglas County School District at Thunder Ridge High School for 4 years. Summer school principal at Arapahoe Community College for 2 years. He was a teacher at Rocky Heights Middle School for 2 years. 6 years as a teacher at Denver Public Schools Lake Middle School, and then a student teacher with Arapahoe Public Schools. So there's a lot to have to dive into this.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. While I mentioned the lack of interfacing with kids in his position as chief of schools, which he took on in the last few years, that does not take into account all the years that he was in schools. And to be clear, there's no allegations of anything involving students specifically or past stuff, but we don't know. And that's where it flares up these concerns more, where you expect the district to say, here's what we're doing, here's what's proactive, here's what you can do, here's a phone number if you have any information or details that you want to provide on this, and so on and so forth. I mean, given this guy's track record for decades of being in education, you would expect that kind of information to come from the district, but that doesn't happen. It's not just a problem, Jeff, with Jefferson County schools. We have other similar issues of communication and numerous problems in Denver public schools, and the list goes on for school districts across the country that try to hide things from parents time and time again. And I should note that Jeffco Schools is the second largest school district in the state of Colorado. And again, David Weiss was the third in command for this district.
Talking with Jimmy Sengenberger. Jimmy, back in August, Real Clear Investigations, which is a division of Real Clear Politics, did this release where they went and looked at all of the settlements that are coming out of school districts right now in these sexual abuse cases. And they believe that what is coming out of our government-run schools is the largest sex abuse scandal in American history, even bigger than anything that the Catholic Church had to deal with. Anything like that that's going to be dwarfed by what we're going to see coming out of these settlements in K through 12 schools. It's another reason why I publicly say all the time, for the love of God, get your kids out of government-run schools. But I think we have a lot of problems there. And providing important sunlight on all of this is Jimmy Sengenberger, and he writes regularly in the Denver Gazette. So please follow him over at Seng Center on X and stay up to date. Jimmy, great reporting. Thank you so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, guys. Transparency and accountability. That's all it's about.
And protecting his kids so that they can, have a fine childhood.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jimmy, so much for that.
Wow, that just hurts. And again, just as Jimmy adequately and accurately outlined, that this is an erosion of trust in that school district. And he's like, it leads you to believe what the heck is going on? What's the rot inside the district, especially because they weren't coming to the parents and telling you, here's what's going on. Here's why we should be concerned. And, that guy did weave his way through the educational system, some of it inside of Jeffco. And he, early on in his career, he did have access to some of the kids. And what does that look like? And the idea of even just parents getting close to him now. And do you then feel like you're a facilitator because you were close to the person that was willing to do this? I remember how crazy it was when both Stephen Tubbs and I found out that our mutual dentist killed his wife.
Yeah, right.
Allegedly right now. The court case is still going on. So still allegedly. But they got a lot of information. So it's one of those things. And we weren't even like good friends or nothing, but we knew him and things. And you're like, wow. Yeah, this is different. This is a whole nother different layer of connection to an individual and possibly facilitating what they did. It's just crazy.
We'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Let's go back to the phone line. Zach, Colorado Springs, you've been very patient. Zach, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. How are you?
Good. How are you? Happy New Year.
Good, good. Hey, I just wanted to call in and maybe give a perspective on what happened in the Vegas situation. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, and most of us go in when we're 18 and we have no life experience. And when we go through boot camp, and especially being in Special Forces, they go through even more rigorous training and mental training. Therefore, we don't have a lot of world life experience, but they basically break you down mentally and physically and bring you back up in a sense that you're ready for war. In essence, what we do is we write a blank check to the government stating, hey, we're defending this country. We're willing to give our life at any moment to protect the freedoms that this country has to offer. And with somebody being in Special Forces and being a lifer in the military, in addition to personal, family problems, all of that compounds on top of everything. And I think that for someone who has been a lifer, their only way of dealing with what they want to get a point across is to do it in a militaristic mentality, if that makes sense.
No, that does. And the question I got, Zach, is do you think the military is doing enough to recognize these mental health challenges and address them internally?
Absolutely not. I think that based on, a lot of the PTSD cases and all of the mental issues that happen while you're in service, I think that there should be a program that, requires people when they're getting out to go through some type of mental therapy. In addition, afterwards, I'm a disabled veteran that has a mental disability because of this. And it's basically pushed to the side and said, okay, we'll rate you and then go on about your way. Until it gets to a point where what happened in Vegas, I think this gentleman, it's in my opinion that, with his militaristic, mentality, family issues, whatever has just compounded. And based on the last 4 years of what this country has gone through, it's kind of a slap in the face to veterans that do write that blank check to the government to, enact the policies that we have. Why should we write that blank check anymore based on the mental perception of this country and what freedoms are?
Gosh,
Zach,
I hope that, I got to tell you, I really appreciate everything you've done as a disabled veteran for this country and for taking time to share your perspective with us, man. You're a rock star.
Yeah, and please call us back again. Yeah, another day. That's great.
Wow. Powerful.
And I think he's right. I think he's right that we aren't paying enough attention to some of the mental struggles of our veterans. But that's,
because you lose your job if you bring it up, essentially. Right? If you're Special Forces.
Yeah.
And you go in there and you're like, I'm struggling with this stuff. They're going to move you to toilet cleaning.
And they may take you off of that for a while. Oddly enough, because in my other gig where I do stuff with AFN, the Armed Forces Network, when I'm doing stuff with them, I read mental health.
Do you?
Yeah, things about going to this place, go here. And there's one website they direct people to that say 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There is someone available.
Is it anonymous?
This website. Yeah. This website today.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do read some of that, but the problem that we have is in our budget, that veterans spending and veterans benefit, that's under discretionary. And that's going to be something that's going to be difficult when we talk about budget fights and things going forward. That falls under discretionary. So the idea of getting more money for that, that's going to be tough. But Zach's right. We need more money for it.
Wow. All right. We'll continue. Phones are lighting up. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We'll continue with the phone calls here in a bit. We're talking, gosh, everything from Jefferson County and David Weiss, and this is the chief of schools, third-ranking Jeffco leader in the administration, overseeing all the superintendents, being brought up on allegations and being investigated for child pornography, then going back to Maryland and allegedly killing himself. And then the district just not notifying parents well, seeming to want to kind of CYA more than, ask parents to call if they had any information related to him, and wanting to protect the students first and foremost, which is a serious problem.
And as Jimmy Sangenberger, columnist for the Gazette, pointed out, it's a lack of trust.
Yeah.
The district has broken the trust they have with parents, and they want to have all these trusted adults. Kids, come and tell us if something's going wrong. Kids, tell us this. But yet we won't tell you.
You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader. This is KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City. By the way, this weekend kicks off the National Western Stock Show. Good music here.
It's like your Super Bowl.
It is like a Super Bowl. I love it,
It's
man.
so
I'm gonna go
exciting.
hang out there for 2 weeks, basically.
Okay, now I got to tell our listeners that recently Jeff has done an interview with people at the National Western Stock Show, and basically he was talking to them about us being out there. He was a little disappointed when he found out that the doors open at 9 and we couldn't broadcast.
I know we were going to do a live broadcast out there.
I was excited about it too, but it was funny.
Those farmers don't get up quite as early, I guess.
Oh yeah, the funny part though is you're like, I got some bad news. We can't be. I'm like, oh, dude. I just love how you sold it because you were so excited about it. Yes.
It's like imagine getting the option to do live broadcast at the World Cup.
I know,
but
so
they
cool.
just don't open the doors early enough.
The thing for me is that the National Western has a lot of really strong childhood memories.
Yeah.
So when I go there, it takes me back to some of the best days when I was a kid and reminds me of some of the things that I love about Colorado. I just think it's fantastic. So yeah, we'll have some guests and things on and talk about it. But unfortunately, we cannot be out there.
We're just up too early. That's all. But we thank everybody from National Western Stock Show for trying to work with us.
Oh, yeah.
That was going to be awesome.
That was going to be so cool.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. We're going to do Brian Arvada. Good morning, Brian. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, morning.
Hey, good morning. Hey, when it comes to the this story about the chief of schools in Jeffco, I think we all need to be really careful. The Denver Gazette had a story that stuck more to the facts. Fox News broke the story with salacious headlines. And what, the facts are that this stuff occurred on personal devices that was undetected by couldn't be detected by the schools. When the police are the first ones that detected it, they told the school system, they immediately terminated him when they told the schools what they were doing, they were investigating. But they said, do not comment on this because it will impede our investigation. So they were put on a order from Jeffco to not comment on anything. And that's on any investigation they have. That's standard procedure that you can let these people go, but you can't tell them why until our investigation is finished, because it will impede, it could hide stuff. And so that's not being not transparent to parents. It's following the law and allowing Jeffco to do the sheriff's department to do their job.
Yeah, Brian, that's a really good point. It's important to remember that everybody is innocent until proven guilty. And if he was maybe coordinating with other people and now all of a sudden they're dumping their devices, that might be why the sheriff's office was trying to delay so they could do their investigation. We just don't know. But Brian, with the facts, really appreciate it. Thanks.
I appreciate that. It still rubs me a little bit wrong. I understand not saying anything during that investigation. It's still the lack of trust, and I would really push back on the district as far as what they can and can't tell the parents and how they approach the issue, because I still feel that it, at the core of it, ends up being a violation of trust between the school district and the parents. Even though I understand the idea of, no, we can't do it while the investigation is going on, but the fact you won't tell them anything and then the response afterwards.
Yeah, right.
It's
so
just
we kind of had to learn
ham-handed.
more from the sheriff's office than the district.
Yeah, that's a little difficult to take.
Let's go to Jay, Denver. Good morning, Jay. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. Great show. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too, brother.
Yeah. I have a question for you about the soldier, the warrior in Colorado Springs. Do you know when he left Colorado Springs and left to go to Vegas? Do you know the date?
It was like right at it. I mean, they tracked his charging and he had to stop and charge, but from my understanding, he didn't like go to Vegas, spend a few days, visiting the casinos or anything like that. He went straight there, drove around Vegas, and then went straight to Trump Tower. So I don't think he was spending a lot of time visiting anybody, stopping. He kind of went straight there.
Yeah, and information we have is that it was rented here on the 28th in Denver, the Cybertruck.
In Denver?
Yeah.
Colorado Springs.
Or Colorado Springs. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So that means
state. Yeah.
Colorado
State.
Springs. Yeah. I was just interested. Again, you folks are unbelievable. You've helped us with the Warrior Projects. Thank you so much. And actually, Jeff, man, sat in your seat, Brother George. He's jagged.
Yeah.
He's he's the dude. I love him. So he had to drive down 470 and go up I-70? That's the way he went there?
Don't know.
You know?
A couple of
I
different
don't
ways, but
know.
I haven't seen it. Yeah, haven't seen either way. But
Okay.
But one of the things that
Okay.
was interesting that I think Tony Kovaleski, the investigative reporter for KMGH that joined us earlier today, pointed out was that the choice of a Cybertruck, because that is easily tracked. I mean, Musk is watching all of those all the time, and then you have cameras on when the charging stations. So the idea being he was not trying to be clandestine was kind of the assumption at this point, that he wasn't worried about people seeing him on the way, nor was he worried about covering his tracks on the way in any shape or form because of his chosen mode of transportation. It's also weird to figure out that Elon Musk has control of the Cybertrucks, because the number of things that he can do, that they can unlock and lock your Cybertruck on their own, and they can turn it on and off, and
there's
all this
cameras
stuff.
in them too.
Yes, exactly. They can follow, and they have access to them all the time. So yeah, that was interesting to find out.
Very sad about the loss of a warrior. I guess that is confirmed that he's gone. But I just had the question because I don't know if you've ever driven or been around a Cybertruck, but they are really, really unbelievable. They're bulletproof on the side. They're bulletproof glass. They have run flat tires. And if you look at the video, excuse me, they actually have a remote tonneau cover that opens up while you're driving. You can actually do that. Now, let's go back to the Warrior, because the Cybertruck you can check out. This is a guy that I believe had 6 Bronze Stars.
That's what I've heard.
In Special Forces. Now, let me ask you this, and I don't know if you've been around these people, but I have. The eagle or the hawk that flies in the sky, they're that smart. They're that good. They're superior in every way. And he put fireworks in the back of the vehicle. This guy could blow up an entire city block in his sleep.
Yeah, no, he could have Timothy McVeighed the building.
Right?
Yeah. See, that leads me
Great reference.
That leads me to the belief that he was trying to make a statement, not making an impact, because he had the ability and the knowledge to make this a devastating explosion, but instead he chose explosives and even a vehicle that constrained the amount of of collateral damage. So for me, it leads me to the conclusion that he was trying to make a statement, not trying to injure innocent people around him or tear down a building or something along the lines of Timothy McVeigh. To me, it's closer to the Buddhist monks and self-immolation during the Vietnam War. That's
well,
what's
and
closer to
here,
me.
producer Adam just handed us the timeline. This comes from the Gazette. December 28th, Livelsberger takes possession of the Cybertruck in Denver when he rented it from the vehicle's owner through the app Turo. 29th, Livelsberger texted his girlfriend out of the blue, I rented a Tesla Cybertruck. December 30th, the Cybertruck is charged at a Tesla charging lot in Monument. December 31st, changing records show he stopped in Trinidad, Las Vegas, New Mexico, Trinidad, Las Vegas, Albuquerque, and Gallup, New Mexico.
He took 50 or 40 west, and then he went up into Las Vegas. Now let's go back to the Warrior for a moment. These guys are so good that they can come into a location. I've seen it, and you do not know they're there. They are so smart. So there's something so troubling. I don't know the answers, but I had questions because our heart hurts that we lost a person. How it happened is awful, but what you're covering is so important because I don't ever blame the individual until I see the proof. Never, ever.
Yeah.
Jay,
that's just the facts. Thank you.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for your call. Jay's line will be open 303-696-1971. Well, coming up next, we're going to get a preview on what the gun grabbers down at the Colorado State Capitol want to do. Joining us live in studio, Ian Escalante, Executive Director of RMGO. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff. Billy, 18 and mostly cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 38 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
The peaceful transfer of power is one of the most fundamental principles of American democracy. As much as any other principle, it is what distinguishes our system of government from monarchy or tyranny. Today,
Kamala will be the hero today.
At the United States Capitol, I will perform my constitutional duty as Vice President of the United States to certify the results of the 2024 election. This duty is a sacred obligation, one I will uphold, guided by love of country, loyalty to our Constitution, and my unwavering faith in the American people. As we have seen, our democracy can be fragile, and it is up to then each one of us to stand up for our most cherished principles.
Well written. Whoever wrote it, someone just needs to help her with the pledge, and she'll be all good to go. She messed that up over the weekend. They'll count the electoral votes 2 hours from now from all 50 states and D.C. The U.S. Capitol Police say heavy security is in place 4 years after a mob attacked the Capitol in what some believe was an effort to disrupt the certification of Biden's alleged win. Others believe undercover intelligence enticed, invited in, and entrapped patriots who know the government is corrupt and the deep state is real. President Biden is visiting New Orleans today to meet with family members of the victims of the New Year's terrorist attack. He'll do that today. Biden is also set to ban new offshore oil drilling along much of the U.S. coastline. The order will impact around 625 million acres of ocean along the Atlantic and Pacific coasts. Slimy Joe said the drilling off the coast may cause irreversible damage and is not needed to meet America's energy needs. DJT on with you this morning on the Salem Network. And
it's ridiculous. I'll unban it immediately. I will unban it. I have the right to unban it immediately. What's he doing? Why is he doing it? You know, we have something that nobody else has. I mean, nobody has to the extent we have it. And
all right, and the computer crashed. So DJT is going to turn it around on day one. Forget all that. What Biden is trying to crush here in the final weeks as president. The Canadians have had enough of the commie Justin Trudeau, and he may actually resign as early as today, but more than likely on Wednesday. That's what they are reporting north of the border. The Broncos ended their 8-year playoff drought on Sunday with a 38-0 victory over the Chiefs. The Broncos entered the postseason for the first time since that 2015-16 season, which led to a Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 50. Broncos hit the road to play the Bills in the opening round of the playoffs, scheduled at 11 o'clock this Sunday. Head coach Sean Payton gave one of the game balls to ownership and said it's a great place for all these guys to play. And coach Bo Nix, 26 of 29, 321 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. FCS championship game tonight at 5 o'clock, North Dakota State and Montana State. That's going to be an awesome game. 15 in Superior, 16 in Lone Tree, 18 in Denver. It is Monday. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A winter weather advisory is in effect from 11 o'clock tonight through noon tomorrow. Partly cloudy to mostly cloudy skies with snow becoming likely and lows near 20. Snow likely Tuesday through the morning mainly. Partly cloudy by afternoon, cold, highs only low 20s, 3 to 6 inches of new snow for Denver by Tuesday noon. Lows Tuesday night, quite cold, single digits with areas of fog. Morning fog Wednesday, then sunny. Highs 30s, teens Wednesday night. Snow showers again Thursday, highs 30s. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. As you can imagine, the gun grabbers down at the Colorado State Capitol are back at it again. The session beginning this week, and they're already laying out their legislative agenda to restrict your Second Amendment rights. Well, joining us is friend of the program, Ian Escalante, the executive director for Rocky Mountain gun owners. Nobody does it better down at the state capitol, fighting for your Second Amendment rights than RMGO. Glad to have you in studio, brother. Welcome back.
Oh, glad to be here. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Bill. Did you guys have a good Christmas? Did you get at least a little bit of downtime?
We did. I did not get any guns for Christmas, so I'm a little sad about that.
Oh,
it's a good time to give guns.
It is a good time to give guns. You got to do it before they start taxing you, too.
That's right.
I'm already planning out my trips to Wyoming to buy new ammo and everything.
Gosh, it's a mess. So let's start with last year.
Sure.
7 bills that passed last year. What were they? And then what do we expect to see this year?
Yeah, so they got us pretty good last year. They weren't able to completely put the nail in the coffin. I mean, last time I was on here, we talked about defeating the assault weapons ban and the complete bloodbath that fighting against that legislation was. We were able to break the supermajority of the Democrats had in the House, but last year they were able to pass a new concealed carry restriction. Yeah. So now you have to, that's not going into effect until June, but some of the counties like Denver and Boulder have already implemented it, where you have to go through this 8-hour course. You got to do a live fire exam. You have to do this written exam, and we're already running into serious issues with that, because they're leaving it all to the sheriffs, and none of the sheriffs have any idea what the curriculum is going to be. They have no idea how to actually implement this legislation. So we're going to see some serious issues with obtaining concealed handgun permits here in the next year or so. They haven't really been clear about when you have to renew either. So that's going to be a mess. They also passed this new state permitting for gun shops. So now if you are, they base this off of Illinois. They have the firearm owner ID card. And the first step that they did when they first started implementing this legislation is they went ahead and they forced all the gun dealers across the state to obtain a state permit. So now you have to go to the Department of Revenue, get your permit on top of your federal permit, and then you have to be subject to all these rulemaking
Please,
and legislation.
Jared Polis, can I sell a gun in Colorado, essentially?
No, the crazy part is that when we were doing the whole arguments, when I was in committee for this, one of the Democrat legislators was like, well, we regulate marijuana like this, so why do you have a problem with it for guns? And my response was, I said, I don't remember seeing in the Constitution that the right to smoke marijuana whenever you want with no restrictions whatsoever shall not be infringed. I don't remember seeing that in the Constitution. They also passed this new law where you have to lock your guns up in your car now. So if you leave your gun unattended in your car, you have to put it in a lockbox. You have to keep it unloaded, and you have to put it out of sight.
Is the trunk good enough? Like, can you just throw it in the trunk, or does it have to be in a lockbox in the trunk?
So you're supposed to throw it in a lockbox inside the trunk. And also, if you're going to put it in your glove compartment too. Originally, they were actually not going to allow you to store it in your trunk or in your glove compartment. They're going to make you try to shove it under the seat or something along those lines. So,
and we talked about that. We think Billy and I were saying that the consequences is that it's likely people are just going to carry their guns more. Right.
Yeah.
Because if you got to go through all that rigmarole, you're just going to stick it in my waistband.
Well, yeah.
Go to
Well,
the grocery store.
The problem is, though, is now you have this new sensitive spaces law that completely limits where you can and can't carry your firearm.
That's right.
And then that really depends on which jurisdiction you're in. Because down, we go about 10 miles south. We're in Douglas County. It's pretty much the Wild West. We can carry practically wherever it was legal to carry before because they opted out. But here in Arapahoe, or specifically here in Aurora, they voted against the opt-out. Actually, I don't even think it ever came up for a vote. Arvada, they voted down the opt-out. Westminster, they voted down the opt-out.
You got to bring a map with you.
So, yeah, you literally have to bring a map with the city ordinances. Otherwise, we're going back to the 90s before we had shall issue concealed carry, where it was you really had no idea whether it was criminal to carry in one county or whether it was legal to carry in another. And it's turning into just a complete and total disaster, which everything that this legislature and Jared Polis, and honestly, at this point, not that I really want to absolve Jared Polis of responsibility, but it's the legislature that's really the problem here.
Yeah.
I mean, the legislature has actually been fighting with Jared Polis because they don't think that he is far left enough on the gun issue and on the labor issue and on the transgender issue and pretty much every issue that the Democrats care about. But as per usual, everything the Democrats touch turns to garbage, and now that's where we're at.
So let's talk what they're introducing this legislative session.
Sure. So we had heard, I mean, if we go back to even just right after the election, Stephen Woodrow, who's actually up for a vacancy committee appointment to the Senate in a couple days, we're going to see how that plays out. And the Democrats made sure they held a seat open on the Senate Judiciary Committee for him, too, in case he gets that appointment. So we had heard that he was going to push for this, well, I'm calling it the Armory Bill, where what he would do is he was going to push for a piece of legislation that would define what an armory is and pretty much ban, quote unquote, private armories. Long story short, it would be a bill that would limit how many firearms each person can purchase and limit how many firearms each person can hold in their own home at a given time. The only way to enforce that is they would have to implement some sort of statewide registry in order to make that happen. So that's another step towards the firearm owner ID
And
card.
is that a big problem? Like private armories?
No.
Like I'm trying to think. I stay up on the news all the time. I don't remember private armories being a big problem.
Well, there's really no such thing as a private armory. I mean, it's just people that own a lot of firearms,
Right.
which that is their right. But now Woodrow wants
and they
to make
tend to be
this
the most responsible. out of all
exactly,
of them,
exactly.
right?
Now,
Like if you're going to invest that many, you're going to have 15 ARs. You probably take it pretty seriously.
exactly. And then the thing is, though, is that Woodrow is saying, people of Colorado, they just have too many guns. They have too many guns, and we need to limit how many guns they can own. I don't really know. I haven't seen any bill text for this yet. I've just heard what Woodrow said about it. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you already have firearms that are over the legal limit. Is the government going to come in and confiscate them? Like, are you going to have to surrender the firearms? Like, how is this going to work?
Woody Woodrow, who is one of the worst down there.
He's horrible.
A total dope, radical leftist progressive. The idea that guy is going to determine how many guns the folks in Elbert County are going to be allowed to purchase.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
And I'm not a betting man, but I bet a large sum of money that Woodrow's never handled, shot, or held a firearm in his entire life. I mean, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. But hey, you know what they say? It's like the same thing about abortion. Like if you don't have a uterus, you don't have an opinion, you never hold a firearm before, you don't get to make laws. Hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I'm sure they're going to come up with some crazy explanation for why that's sexist or whatever. I'm over it.
Ian Escalante, executive director of RMGO, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, live in studio with us. So let's talk other bills that they want to run.
So the big news actually came out on Friday. I actually was able to talk to a couple Capitol insiders, and they warned me that Senator Tom Sullivan was going to be bringing forward a bill. Now, we already knew he was going to bring forward a bump stock ban. He went and did a huge piece in the Denver Post right after the Cargill decision, which struck down the federal ATF rule banning bump stocks that came in under the first Trump administration. He said he was going to do a bill to codify a bump stock ban. Well, it turns out this insider was able to give me information that this is not only going to be a bump stock ban, but it's actually going to be a ban on anything that, and I quote, makes the gun shoot faster, whatever that means. So my guess is it would probably encompass
your finger.
Yeah, binary triggers, force reset triggers, which the force reset trigger debacle is currently making its way through the courts right now. So we'll see how that goes. But the big one is that they said that they want to ban any firearm that can accept a detachable magazine. And after I got this information, we went ahead and we blasted it on social media. We sent an email out to our members. And then this Denver Post article came out, and Tom Sullivan went and interviewed with the Denver Post and said, this isn't going to be an assault weapons ban. We're just going to ban any firearm that can accept the detachable magazine.
Which is like my 9mm Glock is
Exactly.
a detachable
And
magazine.
the thing is again, you have people who have no idea anything about guns whatsoever. And they think that, we're just going to ban firearms that can accept the detachable magazine. Like newsflash, that's about 95% of firearms in common
We're back
use.
to just muskets at that point.
Exactly. So that's what we're dealing with this year. And the funny part is that they're trying to sell it as, this isn't an assault weapons ban, because they've learned the hard way. Even in blue Colorado, people here, especially, we still have a lot of blue dog Democrats down in the San Luis Valley. And we had a whole conversation about this last time.
All on the western slope too.
Exactly. They're not going to go for that. So now they're just trying to repackage the assault weapons ban, and they're trying to brand it as a bump stock ban and high capacity magazine enforcement.
But we already have a ban in Colorado on on magazines, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is that the people of Colorado didn't go for that either, and there are still stores to this day that are selling magazines over 15 rounds, and quite frankly, they should be doing that. I mean, this is a stupid law. A lot of the sheriffs
they're egging on
overruled
a
it.
lawsuit, possibly.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, we've been fighting this in the courts for since the ban was passed back in 2011,
Yeah.
or sorry, no, 2013. So we've been fighting against that. And really what they're going to try to do now is they literally are just going to take the assault weapons ban that failed 2 years in a row. They're repackaging it. They're putting some lipstick on the pig. And then they think the people of Colorado are stupid enough to buy it.
Talking to Ian Escalante, he's the executive director of RMGO on new bills introduced. They haven't been quite introduced yet, but as soon as they are, this will be the big fights down at the state capitol to protect your Second Amendment rights. I mean, where are we right now in the state of Colorado with regards to our Second Amendment rights? It just feels like every year, new laws, more and more laws are coming. It doesn't actually address crime.
No, not at all. I mean,
it seems like they're just focused on making sure that you law-abiding citizens, you're the ones who need to give up more and more of your guns.
What I've been telling everyone is that this is not solving the problem at hand. This is all about control. It's more and more about control. This is not about guns at the end of the day. Guns is the excuse that they're using to push themselves so they can get the government into your home. That is the excuse. They want to get the government into your home. First, it'll be guns. Next, it'll be how you raise your children. Next, it will be, what you're saying in your own home, what you're posting on social media. I mean, we're headed towards a full totalitarian, labor government, United Kingdom type of stuff where they're trying to extradite people from other countries who post hate speech online. I mean, you put this question in front of Stephen Woodrow or Lorena Garcia or any of these uber lefties, and they would be fully on board with prosecuting people for posting hate speech online. I mean, they've all but said it. So this is all about control over and over and over again.
Stephen Woodrow, by the way, blamed me for the Club Q shooting.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Yeah, he said I have blood on my hands because I ran a Christian conservative think tank. Even though the guy that perpetrated Club Q was not a Christian conservative by any means.
Yeah, he was a non-binary transgender.
Right.
And that's the other thing, too, is that people just want to ignore the fact that we've had some pretty major mass shootings in the last couple of years that have been carried out by transgender individuals. They just want to forget that completely. And Lorena Garcia wants to go on about toxic masculinity and white males and how we're white males are the scourge of society. It's all about control. They know that as long as the people of Colorado have firearms and are armed, they're not going to be able to carry out the kind of tyranny that we saw in COVID. I mean, that was just a test run. COVID was a test run. They had the excuse to do it then. Now they want to make this permanent. They want to have permanent control over our lives. You see that with all the cameras going up on the highway. You see that with the cameras going up. I mean, they're just putting up cameras everywhere. They just went ahead and the state just subsidized a new camera system to go up in Fort Collins. I mean, anyone who doesn't see that they're trying to build a 1984 style, totalitarian surveillance state, not just in Denver, but spread it out across the state of Colorado, they're kidding themselves and they don't see what's actually going on.
Talking with Ian Escalante, executive director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. When we come back, I want to ask you what Republicans are going to do to try to stop this. And are you coordinating with them? What are their plans? Both in the Senate and the House. We'll get to that. I want to talk to you about my friend Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. Look, I've known Dan for well over a decade. This guy's pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. He's with us on the values. That matters because when you choose an attorney to represent you in an injury case, you want somebody that's going to send a message to everybody else that they're serious, they're grounded, they're principled. Dan Caplis is the son of a police officer and a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. But more than just being a great guy with solid principles, Dan Caplis is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. That matters It gets better. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. He's a real winner in the courtroom, so much so that Dan Caplis Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law, a serious firm for serious cases. You might be asking yourself, I might not be able to afford this guy. Don't worry, Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551. Chances are you're not on the side of a road in a car accident right now going, gosh, that was serendipitous. I got this phone number. So you don't want to wait until you get in a car accident. You have to deal with police, paramedics. God forbid somebody's heading to the hospital. You got to deal with your insurance company. Maybe somebody else is injured in the car crash. At that point, you're going to sit there and Google Dan Caplis Law. No, you want to be able to get a hold of his team right away and start getting things rolling. So here, I'm going to give you the phone number again. Dan Caplis Law. Put it in your phone, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS Law.com. We'll continue with Ian Escalante, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Joining us live in studio, Ian Escalante, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, giving us insight into the anti-gun bill. Anti-Second Amendment bills are going to be introduced down at the Colorado State Capitol. So we talked about how they're basically going to go after anything with a detachable magazine, which is, every possible. It's about 90% of guns out there. So what are the Republicans' plans to try to fight this?
Well, the good thing is that the Republican Party, at least in the House, has been moved out of the broom closet. So there's enough members there to actually have a real caucus now. And that was honestly, a big part of it was RMGO, the fact that we were able to work with some other conservative groups to get people like Stephanie Vigil unseated. She got unseated by 3 votes, which was one of the closest the closest general election we had this year. So
that's one household.
Exactly.
That's mom, dad, and the 18-year-old.
Exactly. So we were able to flip that seat. We were able to get Dan Woog back into the legislature. And then we were able to take out Mary Young, who's the wife of the current state treasurer, Dave Young. We were able to take her out by about 500 votes. So those are some victories. It's going to put us in a little bit of a better position in the House. It's definitely going to make the margins a little bit closer. But really what it comes down to is I've been talking with Republican legislators, senators, House members, and they're prepared to go the distance. They're prepared to stay up all night. They're prepared to filibuster. I know a couple years ago when they did the Murder of Children Act, where they allowed abortion all the way up to the day that the baby's born, the Republicans went out there, they filibustered for 24 hours, and I think we can expect that on the assault weapons ban and a lot of the other gun bills this year, especially because they're going to be out of the super minority. They're going to have more votes, and we're going to see how the Democrats do with limiting debate as they have in previous years. I'm not going to say they're not going to do it, but who knows? Maybe with a higher Republican margin, they won't be able to justify doing it like they did the last couple of years. We'll have to see about a lot of that, but they are prepared to go the distance. And the other thing, too, is that we actually have RMGO legislators who are pushing for repeal bills of some of the bills that were passed last year. So Representative Max Brooks from House District 45 down in Castle Rock, he was endorsed by Rocky Mountain Gun Owners Super PAC. He's actually running a bill this year to repeal the state dealer permitting for gun shops. So the gun dealers have been under an immense amount of stress over the years dealing with this, or over the last couple months. It's turning out that it's going to be exactly what we thought it was going to be. The Department of Revenue and their firearms dealer division is going to come up with arbitrary regulations and rules where if those rules aren't followed, the gun dealers could be shut down.
What's an example of a rule? Like you said, arbitrary.
Yeah,
rules.
One of the rules is that one of the first rules that was drafted up was that if just based on a simple accusation or tip of illegal activity, the agency, the department, can issue an order for cause where the gun shop then has a response time where they have to prove themselves innocent. So this is a guilty until proven innocent system.
It's kind of like the red flag.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where if there's an accusation that, let's say, someone accuses them of selling high capacity magazines, they would then have a certain window. The original draft of the rule, it said at 30 days. I don't know if that's changed or not, 30 to 40 days to come back and say, oh, I promise we didn't actually break the law. Please, please, please don't take our license away. So that's what we're seeing here.
Ian Escalante, I want to jump in there
Sure.
just for a second. It does seem really silly that they would want to have that kind of a regulation, but how would the gun shop go about proving a negative? You can't, because you can't. The gun shop, there's nothing the gun shop could walk into court with to prove they did not do something. The accusation, the burden of proof is naturally on the affirmative. If the accusation is leveled, the gun shop can't come in and say, look at all of our paperwork. Yeah. It doesn't show us that we have sold a this, that, or the other thing. And then of course the argument would be, oh, you just hit it. You didn't write it down. No. How do they get around the idea of having someone trying to prove a negative? Because that doesn't work. Just like I couldn't ask you, prove to me that space aliens don't exist. You can't do it.
Exactly.
How do you do it?
So the one thing is that these disputes would not be settled in a court. They would be settled in a administrative court. So it would be like for your driver's license. So how it would work is it would be in it would be a Department of Revenue administrative hearing where they would discuss whether the license should be revoked or not. Now, there is a form where they can respond to the order and say, this is false. We don't have high capacity magazines on the shelf. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is so arbitrary. This leaves everything on the table to where the Department of Revenue could just say, yeah, we don't believe you, so we're going to take your license away.
And the thing that worries me the most about this one, and this is where I'm going to march lockstep, and with you being this is a dumb, stupid idea, is we don't, again, it's the idea of the innocent until proven guilty. We don't pick up someone and say, you're a member of the TDA gang, you're going to jail, and we're going to keep you in prison for 3 years. You got to prove you're not a gang member.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We don't come up to you and say, prove you didn't kill your spouse. Prove you didn't embezzle this money.
But
we don't do that.
I
ever.
also don't know if this is like a big problem. I mean, I could be wrong, right? I mean, feel free to text in or call with all of the gun shops in Colorado that are breaking laws and guns are resulting in mass murders and shootings and all that. I just don't see it as a problem.
The weird part for me would be that if gun laws are breaking those laws, rules, and regulations, I hate to point this out to Ian and Jeff and our listeners. There are rules, laws, and regulations. There are consequences to breaking those things.
Yes.
So if we're talking about them doing things they shouldn't, there already are rules, people. Yeah, the thing that worries me the most is forcing these gun dealers into a stance of having to defend actions they don't take. That is ridiculous on its face. And what I would say is any lawmaker here in Colorado that believes we need to make sure these gun dealers prove their innocence first, you first need to prove that you're not a child molester.
Oh,
just do it for me.
Exactly.
We are going to start with that premise and then move forward.
That's good, Bill.
That's all we need to do. That's where I want to start. You prove to me first you're not a child molester. Then I'll talk to you about how we have to prove that these gun shops are not doing this. You don't prove a negative. It's stupid.
Hey, there might be some legislators that have problem proving that. So
that may have been why I chose it.
In all seriousness, though, I mean, you're absolutely right, Bill. I mean, this is going to be a serious problem. And to your point, I mean, the problem that we're running into, though, is that we have groups like Colorado Ceasefire, where the lobbyist, Eileen McCarran, has gone around into committee hearings bragging that she and some of the other people, their job is to literally go around to gun shops and try to entrap them into doing something illegal. So they'll go into gun shops and ask to buy a quote unquote high capacity magazine. And then if the gun shop, sells it to them, they'll call it in. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with malicious actors that are going out and they're trying to get gun shops to break the law. That way they can snitch on them, and then they can get them shut down.
Talking to Ian Escalante, he's executive director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. Breaking news, Justin Trudeau has resigned, and I'm going to ask him about guns in Canada because it seems like they're just constantly trying to take those away. But you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Well, no one does it better down at the Colorado State Capitol than Rocky Mountain gun owners. And joining us live in studio, Ian Escalante is joining us, executive director. So we only got about a minute or two. I think you see in Canada, and Justin Trudeau just resigned, you see where they eventually go, the gun grabbers. It's just always more and more guns we got to take away.
Exactly. The most recent, I have this information up right here. The most recent, I don't know if they call it a parliamentary edict or whatever. The most recent law that was passed by the Canadian Parliament, this was on December 5th. They added about 230 more firearms that they were going to ban to their assault weapons ban. So if you anyone who's listening wants to know where passing an assault weapons ban is going to lead, it's going to lead to pretty much the only firearms that are unrestricted are shotguns, hunting rifles, some quote unquote military. I don't really know what they mean by military style rifles because that's a very, very broad term. But I mean, restricted most handguns, fully automatic weapons, guns with sawed-off barrels, and most military rifles. Their magazine capacity ban for rifles is 5 rounds. 5 rounds.
We all know it in America. You don't have the First Amendment. You don't have limited government without the Second Amendment. It's why you must join Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. Go to rmgo.org. I'm a member. Join them today. They're going to be down at the Colorado State Capitol fighting for your Second Amendment rights. Ian, thanks so much for joining us. You've been listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader. We are News Talk 710 KNUS. Man, it's Monday. Can you feel it? Can't believe that weekend's over. Have a good day.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you tomorrow.